Namaskar, good morning, Pranam, Johar. I cannot express in words, I am so pleased today to see such luminaries amongst us at the Press Club of Odisha. And I have been given the task by Anant Nath, the President of Editors Guild of India, to welcome all the distinguished guests and also the distinguished audience, students, teachers, businessmen, public relations personnel, all the people who matter in Bhubaneswar and Orissa. When I start thanking, my first thank will go to two people who are very close to me, because of whose constant support the Press Club has survived and it is thriving. That is Annapurna Madam and Jayashish Sir, who sit here in the front row. I will thank Anant Babu, the President of Editors Guild of India, and his team, who have helped in formulating the program and putting up this show. And of course, one cannot but thank Ruben Banerjee, the persona who's little bit like a mirchi, little bit like a salt, and like a drop of lemon. So he adds the taste to everything. I, on behalf of the Press Club of Odisha, also welcome Mr. N. Ram, the former editor-in-chief of The Hindu. It is not only a paper from Chennai, but it is a national daily. And while I was in Delhi, they started printing from Delhi, and I used to subscribe to the paper because I thought, and I still think, that is a paper that makes you think. I would also welcome Mr. Sanjay Hegde, who is yet to come here. He's probably having a little, he came in late, so he will come in late here. He came in late last night. Mr. Paranjay Thakurta, who's a young revolutionary, a writer, a poet. He produces, now lately he's producing songs that can be called patriotic, in a sense that it is meant for the real India that is Bharat. It is not the other kind of India that is Bharat, but the other kind of India that is Bharat. So Paranjay is well known in his circle. The subject matter, opportunities and challenges in regional media, is a subject that when I first read it, and when Anant was kind enough to send it to me, I thought about it, and I started wondering that before 1947, India was not what we see in the map. It was not Kashmir to Kanyakumari by any chance. There were so many kingdoms, so many royalties, and so many pieces. There was British India. Prior to that, the Mughals had a part of India, and the south was different, the north was different, the west was somewhere else. And interestingly, those who are aware of Odisha's history, they know that from the days of Kalinga, Odisha was neither under the Chandragupta Maurya. From that time onwards, it was not under them till Ashoka, one of the last Mauryan kings, before the eclipse of that empire, till he had the Kalinga war and he tried to occupy Kalinga. It was free from the Mauryan Empire. It was free from the Mughal Empire. It was free of the British. The British never directly ruled Orissa. We had 26 or 27 Rajas and Maharajas who were ruling us, and there used to be one white man who would be going around 5-7 kings' courts and selling them Rolls-Royce cars and weapons and things like that, mostly in relation to trade, but never really, they didn't govern, they never had their army here. And so this land has a lot of uniqueness about it. It has a history that is very different from many other parts of India. We have been a tolerant race. We have never been, how would I put it? We've never been full of hate for anybody. We may be hating each other. That's fine. That's actually welcome in a way. It's a healthy thing, because sometimes hate spurs you on to do things. But we have generally not been a hateful crowd. And those who have come to Orissa, they feel that this is a unique land which has a lot of history, mostly unrecorded, and it is a state that is capable of giving leadership to the whole country when the time comes. Our youth, they are educated, they are intelligent, and one of the most remarkable things is when all other states, except the southern states, when all other states have been burgeoning with their population, Orissa's population has been very much under control, and it is a state which has mineral resources, which has enough abundant natural endowments. And lately we know that in the month of October, actually a lot of Odias like me also, I feel sad if there is no cyclone in October. I feel, ki, what happened? We are missing out on life. And so that also, Lord Jagannath, Ma Samaleswari, they were so kind on us. They did give us a little sampling of a cyclone. Dana asikri dana bandila. Kintu dana bandikri bhi kichi bises kheti karini. It didn't damage too much. It passed us by, and we had a beautiful, we are having good weather. The rain has been a little bit of a bothersome thing, but anyway, we are used to it. We are, so regional, when I was talking about regional media, I was wondering, what is regional? Like I started off, I veered off somewhere else. There is no national media here. There is no national leader here. In this country, everybody is regional. We all belong to different regions. When we get together, we form the nation. Calling only English the national media, any media that is in English, or any leader who speaks in English can be a national leader, or any newspaper or television channel that is in English can be a national media. I do not agree with that. I believe that regionalism is unlimited. Everybody is regional, and everybody has a role to play in the total framework of the nation. Before I wind up, I would like to thank the editor of Samaj, Mr. Tapan Mishra, who took all the trouble to be with us this morning on this rainy day, in spite of his personal problems, family problems, health problems. And I would also like to thank the editor of Sambad, Ms. Tanaya Patnaik, who is the youngest editor in Odisha today. And I would like to thank anybody else that I have forgotten, those who are here. and all our panelists, Navin Babu, Manoranjan Babu has not come. Acha, Manoranjan Babu is there, Jajati Babu is there, all our panelists are here. Sanjay ji has come, Mr. Sanjay Hegde, senior counsel from the Supreme Court. So all the panelists are here, all the speakers are here. I'm very happy. The success, I would now label it 100%. I hope you will agree. So in the beginning, when we start, we have Mr. N. Ram, the former editor-in-chief of Hindu, who would be addressing all of you. Let me read a few lines about Mr. Ram. Mr. Ram is a distinguished Indian journalist and former editor-in-chief of The Hindu, one of India's most respected English-language newspapers. Known for his fearless and principled approach to journalism, he has played a pivotal role in shaping investigative journalism in India. Ram is celebrated for his coverage of major political and social issues, including the Bofors. That's where I noticed him, and I became a great fan of N. Ram. And that scandal, I think all of you may not have been born then or may not remember. That scam brought down a big prime minister, and it brought about a great change in Indian politics. It exposed the corruption at the highest level, at the prime minister's level. An advocate, N. Ram, an advocate for, what happened? An advocate for press freedom, he has consistently championed the values of transparency and accountability in media. His extensive experience and commitment to ethical journalism make him a highly respected voice in the Indian media landscape. This little note that I made, and I got some assistance from colleagues, is not enough to explain who Ram is. I think when all of you listen to him, you will yourself be able to judge his depth and his understanding of things, not only of the past, but what's going to happen in the future, not only of yesterday, but of tomorrow. So I would like to invite Mr. N. Ram on stage to deliver his address. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm pleased to be at this conclave at the invitation of the President of the Editors Guild of India and the President of the Press Club of Odisha. And last evening we had a very pleasant conversation on issues that matter, especially issues relating to the media, at a get-together hosted by Mr. Satpathy. So I'm very happy to be here. I'd like to express relief that Cyclone Dana made landfall and that the damage and destruction, although quite considerable, was contained through quick action by all the concerned. And our hearts go out to the hundreds of thousands of people whose lives were disrupted. The damage was considerable, I was told, in some parts of Odisha. We don't have the full picture yet, but it was contained, and I think that is a matter for some relief. I want to start out by saying that I agree with Mr. Satpathy that the term regional media is a bit out of place, because I fully agree with him. There's nothing called the national media, because earlier that was a code word for the English language press, which actually did not circulate in every part of the country, although it has spread its wings. So I think the more useful term would be Indian language newspapers or the Indian language media. And the rise of the Indian language press, in particular newspapers, was researched and analyzed by my friend, the political scientist Robin Jeffrey, in his landmark book, India's Newspaper Revolution, published in 2000. It came out, Oxford University Press, in 2000, and since then it has been revised. Before that, he wrote a number of articles for the Economic and Political Weekly on the dynamism, in contrast to what was happening in many other countries. After the late 1970s, the Indian language press took off and they became mass newspapers. I think Odisha was very much part of this trend. Circulations skyrocketed, and Professor Jeffrey, who's based in Australia, begins with a proclamation. A revolution in Indian language newspapers began in the late 1970s. And I quote, "It was little noticed by India's English language elite and virtually unknown outside India. Now it's much better known, partly thanks to Jeffrey's scholarship on the growth of successful newspapers in about a dozen or so Indian languages, which of course includes Oriya." He highlighted a lively and buoyant situation where essentially 5 factors played a key role. 1, improved technology, which enabled the production and distribution of large numbers of more attractive newspapers. 2, steadily expanding literacy. 3, better purchasing power. And 4, aggressive publishing. And finally, and that's what's called the Crimean War factor, political excitement. Whether it's good or bad for the country, if there is excitement in politics, if there's turbulence, if there are striking developments, it has been well established that newspapers and other media grow. You saw the phenomenon in the United States when Trump was the president. It was called the Trump bump, including newspapers that are very critical of Donald Trump, President Donald Trump at that point, like the New York Times. They took advantage of this because Trump was quite an exciting character, although very, very strange character as a politician, so far as newspapers are concerned. All these things come out in the research of Robin Jeffrey and some others about the dynamism and the factors behind the growth of Indian language newspapers. And of course, television, news television, is another story, a parallel story which again took off in the 80s and 90s and thereafter. But today, a quarter century after Robin Jeffrey published this important book, which in a sense it both analyzed and celebrated the rise of or what is called India's newspaper revolution, the scenario has clearly changed, has evolved and clearly changed profoundly. And we need to, nobody I think has all the data on this. The research has not really been done about the changes that came thereafter, comparable to what Jeffrey was able to document in his book, which basically dealt with the post-emergency period up to the late 90s. The situation has clearly changed. The transformation has been striking. The challenges are tough. And I know that this conclave has been planned, to some extent at least, to register and exchange ideas and insights on these challenges. But these challenges are also, as the cliche goes, opportunities, and there will be transitions that lie ahead. We just do not have, as far as I know, enough information and data on various factors, various facets of these challenges, these opportunities, and the transitions that lie ahead across India's vast, diverse, and uneven media ecosystem. But I think a lot of people say that the situation is very dire, that we are into a second emergency and so on. It's bad enough. The authoritarianism, the assaults directed at the news media in India, and India deservedly ranks where it does. I'll come to that in a minute. In rankings of press freedom put out by various independent organizations. I know the Press Council chairperson, Justice Ranjana Desai, has a problem with this. Earlier chairpersons of the Press Council of India also contested it. I think it's a wrong thing for the Press Council chair to do, that take issue and kind of go out there and indulge in polemics, questioning the methodology. The methodology has been laid out very clearly in the reports, but that's another matter. But India deservedly ranks, I think, where it does in these international rankings. But that's not the emergency. Mr. Satpathy and I know the emergency. There are others also here, senior journalists and editors who lived through that. And it was different. There was total censorship. The political situation perhaps was not as bad as it is today, but so far as the newspapers were concerned, there was total censorship. You could hardly write anything outside. Even blank pages were not allowed. And I don't think we need to exaggerate the situation, because that would only lower spirits. It won't be true, but it will also lower spirits. I think there are plenty of spaces, plenty of voices in the vast, uneven, diverse Indian media ecosystem that speak up. And after the ground shifted under Mr. Modi's feet as a result of the last general election, where they lost the majority, I think these voices, I was discussing it with some friends yesterday, they said the same thing independently. And I think the conduct of, or the behavior of certain institutions, including the judiciary, also in the media and elsewhere, I think more voices, more independent voices are beginning to sound, which we didn't hear earlier. So I think the situation is not as dire as was made out. Nevertheless, it is bad enough. The BJP government at the center and also certain state governments have conducted targeted assaults on freedom of expression, on media freedom and independence, and other fundamental rights. They have used, the central government in particular has used anti-terror, sedition, and other draconian laws to incarcerate without bail or trial. And there are distinguished lawyers and also former judge will be here later on. We look forward to that discussion as well. For prolonged periods, they incarcerate without bail or trial journalists, students, human rights defenders, civil society activists, and troublesome critics of the government. And the post-2014 downslide in media freedom, I referred to this earlier, in media freedom and independence, has seen India sink from the rank of 140 out of 180 countries in 2014 to 159. That's the latest ranking in 2004. among 180 countries and territories in the World Press Freedom Index, published by Reporters Without Borders. The central government has made a concerted effort to police and censor the internet, the social media, technology platforms that deliver streamed content via internet-connected devices known as OTT platforms, and also digital news providers. It has almost certainly conducted illegal surveillance against a large number of journalists, along with politicians, civil society activists, and other selected targets by deploying NSO Group's military-grade software, Pegasus. The matter is pending before the Supreme Court of India, and I'm a petitioner in this case, so I will say no more about it. Shockingly, in the decade 2014 to 2024, 19 journalists have been murdered in connection with their work across India, compared with 11 during the previous decade, which was bad enough. Since 1992, the New York-based Independent Committee to Protect Journalists, known as CPJ, has meticulously, after careful inquiry and strict verification, documented the work-related killing of journalists worldwide. And over the past decade, India has been described as one of the most dangerous places for journalists, especially investigative reporters, to do their job. Research suggests that communal and other forms of divisive politics and social polarization across India have made an already bad situation worse. But this is not all. Since 2008, CPJ has been publishing an annual Global Impunity Index. The Global Impunity Index is a quantified ranking of countries where journalists are murdered, the cases remain unsolved, and no conviction has been obtained. In other words, whatever be the claim, the rule of law does not apply when journalists are murdered in the course of their work. I'm not talking about private disputes, property disputes, and so on, where some journalists may be attacked or murdered even. But these are murdered in connection with their work, because of their work, in the course of their work, and this is well documented. I regret to say that year after year, India finds itself among the dozen or so countries that figure in the Global Impunity Index. In fact, India is a founding and permanent member, it seems, of this club of shame. This is a very serious matter, and recently, a very fine journalist, Gurbir Singh, who's a member of the Press Council of India, wrote a long report documenting this, going back, and the figures he gives are quite shocking. But the chairperson of the Press Council of India has seen it her duty to contest each and every one, virtually, of these assertions or these statements by Gurbir Singh in a very long note. So if you go to the website of the Press Council of India, you'll see the gap between what journalists want, they're documenting it accurately or trying to do it, they give the sources, but a stance has been taken unfortunately, by the chairpersons, not just this one, of the Press Council of India, contesting this or raising questions about methodology and so on, and this matter has to be, I would suggest for students of journalism and researchers, this is an area that should be looked into seriously. These are areas that require serious discussion in fora like this, in conclaves like this. I want to compliment my friend, my young friend, Anant Nath, President of the Editors Guild of India, and also the last 2 or 3 presidents and with their teams for taking up the issues immediately. If you want one body of journalists that responds quickly, at least in form of statements, I think it is the Editors Guild of India. I have not had any in-depth association with the Editors Guild of India except to support or read their statements and so on. But if you go to the website, I don't think they have a good enough website though. Maybe Anant can do something about it. But you'll learn a lot. So I really want to commend this. People shouldn't feel helpless or defenseless because there are bodies, there are press clubs, good press clubs. Sometimes the press clubs get involved in factionalism and so on. And Chennai is an example of that. We are still trying to reform it. But you obviously have a very good press club going with a lot of cooperation among both seniors and younger people. But I think these efforts are important. The work of associations of working journalists, the Editors Guild of India and the Press Club, if they all get together, the kind of the resistance which seems sporadic at this point of time can become more organized, more concerted, and more effective. And just as the political situation compelled the government to withdraw the broadcast bill, I think we can win battles like that, or particularly on attempts to police the internet and other legislative initiatives that may be in the offing. So I'm much more hopeful about what can be done to push back authoritarianism directed at the media and journalists than many others, because we used to hear these dire assessments and forecasts of what may lie ahead. One other factor before I move on to, I had a discussion and I was told there would be a lot of interest in the likely impact of artificial intelligence, particularly generative artificial intelligence, Gen AI as it's called, on the media. It's an area of great interest, and perhaps there has not been enough discussion on this in India, although elsewhere there's quite a literature on this subject. Let me now move on to, because time is limited and there are many other sessions to come, to the subject of generative artificial intelligence and its relevance to and impact on the news media and journalism. My observations are partly based on the Hindu's experience, also the experience of some other newspapers like the Times of India and the Hindustan Times. Also on, I had a conversation with my friend Pranoy Roy about Decoder, his new initiative, which is AI powered, and we have a general idea of what is happening. The general claim is that Gen AI presents attractive opportunities for the news media with the promise of making our work easier and better, taking the drudgery out and improving productivity. This would allow journalists to focus on the most significant part of their work. Here I want to digress about what journalism is about for a few minutes, because I think it's very important to have a conceptual framework about what this is all about. What are the central tasks of journalism? One, what are its functions or roles? One can be, without going into excessive detail, let me list them. I think the two central functions are, one, the credible informational function. There has to be trust. You have to build credibility. Credibility doesn't always mean you're always right, but basically, and this is built over the long term, there is trust among readers or viewers or listeners find you credible or trustworthy, at least prima facie. It doesn't mean that they rely on you for everything, but this is a central function without which no newspaper, no news television channel, no news radio station, or digital news provider will be able to sustain itself. There are those which are purely propaganda agents, and I don't think they have a great long-term future. That's central function number one. But it's not enough to be credible, to provide credible information. There is a second central function, which is a critical function. By whatever name called, you're critical, you're analytical, you're investigative, you take on a watchdog role if you like, but it goes deeper than merely reporting the facts and so on in a credible way. So it's a critical function, it's an analytical function, it's an investigative function. And it also tries to make sense. And related to these functions are derivatives, like providing a forum for different views to come together to contend. And the old theory that, you get to the truth if you allow opposing points of view to clash, going back to Milton and so on, that is at play, that all serious media provide a forum for discussion, for debate, for controversies within a certain framework, if possible in a civil way. And then you have an agenda building function, not in a negative sense, but a virtuous agenda. The mass hunger in Kalahandi district. Earlier there were stories about the sale of girls for 20 rupees and so on, which were investigated. Later on they found that some of that was exaggerated, but stories like that, where the newspaper gets onto a campaign in a virtuous sense, and then an agenda is built. Public opinion begins to change. People respond. Authorities are forced to intervene in some way. So I think there is that function. When you talk about the sex ratio at birth, about which Professor Amartya Sen and others made important interventions several years ago, where India has a poor record along with China and others. I'm talking about, the sex ratio at birth, and so on literacy campaigns, and all these things, the news media can play a very important role. And I think to some extent in India, sections of the Indian language press as well as also other English language newspapers have played this role against hunger as crisis, so on. So that's an agenda building role. But of course, you also have other functions like the entertainment function, and people are beginning to talk about the propaganda role, the manufacture of consent. So I just want to give you an idea that there's a huge literature on this question, and younger journalists need to have a conceptual framework for doing their journalism. Otherwise, what's it all about? Is it just to get a salary? You'll get better salaries in most other sectors. You do better in many other sectors. So why do you want to become a journalist? Unless there is some idealism, unless you want to make a difference in society. I think that idea to strengthen that and empower yourself, I think you need conceptual framework. Now, coming back to the subject of artificial intelligence and related factors, the claim is that Gen AI would allow journalists to focus on what really matters and what are the basic tasks of journalism today. Verification, bearing witness, investigation, and sense-making. You take these four as the core tasks within the framework I mentioned as essential to journalism, at least journalism's claimed classical mission of holding the powerful to account, ensuring fairness and justice. So is that claim true, that generative AI would free journalists to concentrate on this? We already know that Gen AI poses new, complex and formidable challenges to the media and to journalism, especially to its core values. Let me now also digress again a little to look at a phenomenon that has had a widespread disruptive impact in the complex media ecosystem much before artificial intelligence came to the fore. And this is the global challenge of disinformation. Misinformation and disinformation are not new. They have been around for a very long time. In fact, much before journalism became a modern profession. What is new is the nature and scale of disinformation, especially online disinformation, which does not respect national borders. I would suggest that India and the United States are among the countries most affected by disinformation on an industrial scale. We saw its effects during the run-up to the 2024 Lok Sabha election and also the assembly elections. And just this week, the New York Times published a news analysis titled, "As Election Looms, Disinformation Has Never Been Worse." The reporter, Stephen Lee Myers, who has extensively covered the impact of disinformation on U.S. electoral politics, writes, and I quote, "Smears, lies, and dirty tricks, what we call disinformation today, have long been a feature of American presidential election campaigns. 2 weeks before this year's vote, that is November 5. However, the torrent of half-truths, lies, and fabrications, both foreign and homegrown, has exceeded anything that came before, according to officials and researchers who document disinformation. For example, Kamala Harris has been falsely accused of sexually molesting students with a faked AI-created video that purported to show a victim receiving this video received more than 5 million viewers on X, formerly known as Twitter, which is now owned by Elon Musk. I mention this because very often there is confusion about what the term fake news is not quite accurate. The term, I think it's important to make a clear and actionable differentiation between disinformation, which is deliberate and motivated, and misinformation, which is not intentional and is typically a result of reporting or editing failure that can be corrected easily. So far as the media are concerned, misinformation happens, inaccuracies are published, and they can be corrected or they should be corrected. And it's quite easy to correct them. But both types of inaccurate and false information can cause harm, even significant harm. But it is clear that it is disinformation that presents the big threat, scaled up and weaponized on the search, messaging, and social networking platforms that are operated by the technology companies. Disinformation causes great harm to democracy, to media freedom and independence and its credibility, and in charged socio-political settings, to human lives and welfare as well. Witness the lynchings of Muslims in different parts of India. Fortunately, they have been contained in recent times, but there have been plenty of instances because of what is posted on the social media, particularly WhatsApp groups, which are closed. AI's easy accessibility to anyone with a smartphone means that disinformation and misinformation can be instantly disseminated on social media platforms. Depending on the socio-political circumstances, motivated fake news, as disinformation is popularly known, can find wide acceptance in society and in the polity before encountering a measure of resistance from credible professional media and from standalone fact-checking organizations. Fortunately, we have an excellent fact-checking organizations operating on a slim budget, small team, alt news, and also there is Boom, and then you have fact-checking units within large media organizations. Also, they are doing a pretty good job, I think, but they need to be popularized, the checks. In the case of alt news, they are more than just fact-checking, they do good investigations. And technologically, they're quite sophisticated in the tools they use to detect disinformation. It's well known that generative AI already provides a variety of tools that can be used to aggravate and heighten the threat and the practical effects of disinformation. One example is toxic deep fakes that have already taken a deep toll of people's reputations and lives, particularly women's lives. Women journalists are targeted. We have it even in Tamil Nadu, and fortunately there it was cracked down as soon as it appeared, but this is a distressing phenomenon with deep fakes being used. And it's not always deep fakes. In India, I think this technology has not been widely embraced. Even shallow fakes, simple fraud, using old videos to assert that it's happened recently, and even changing the actors who are involved in this. All this works and finds common acceptance and leads to distressing results. It's perhaps less known that generative AI holds the potential to detect and expose disinformation and deep fakes and thus mitigate the harms. That at any rate is the claim, but the actual results will be known only in the future, because that's 2 or 3 years down the road, we are told, that the ability of these tools to detect deep fakes. The challenge, and you can say the opportunity for professional journalists and media organizations, is thus twofold. Use AI to the extent possible without bypassing established processes of verification and accountability, and help in the fight against disinformation and misinformation quickly and effectively. The Hindu is a partner in an ongoing BBC-sponsored initiative called the Trusted Media Initiative, TNI, that seeks to do this in both well-established and innovative ways. As our newspaper's representative in TNI summits, I know how tough and complex the challenge of countering disinformation is. Project Origin, you can look it up, there's a website, in which the BBC and Microsoft have leading roles, is an alliance of organizations from the publishing and technology world that work together with an engineering approach to create a process where the provenance and technical integrity of content can be confirmed. Project Origin's ambitious goal is to establish a chain of trust from the publisher to the consumer, but it is still a work in progress. Disinformation aside, AI's vulnerability to what is known as hallucination poses a problem. In AI speak, hallucination is the unpredictable propensity of large language models, or LLMs, to perceive patterns or objects that are non-existent or impossible to human observers, and to make up facts and generate outputs that are nonsensical or grossly inaccurate. There was a famous case of AI, a lawyer's firm in the US did this. It cooked up cases that didn't exist. Some lawyers would be familiar with this. And that is the result of what is known as hallucination. AI experts concede that while several of these issues have been addressed and resolved, even in the best of circumstances, the use of AI tools can have unforeseen and undesirable consequences. It follows that this should make us pause and exercise caution in the use of these tools. Aside from the problem of hallucination, there is the historical baggage Gen AI carries of different perspectives and biases of other people's dominant but possibly ill-informed views and narratives. Reputed media organizations, I give the example of the Financial Times, the Hindu or the Hindustan Times or the Indian Express, and several Indian language media houses, they explicitly and publicly commit themselves, or they should, to the proposition that there will be human oversight at every level in the use of AI, and that there will be a professionally trained human at the end of the process. It's called human in the loop. Whether this commitment can be sustained as Gen AI becomes more and more pervasive in journalistic and news media operations remains to be seen. Unless the core editorial values are deeply and strongly secured within the news organization and in journalistic practice, the temptation to stray away from well-established professional ethical standards, transparency, protocols, and social responsibility in the use of AI tools, this will be hard to resist. The temptation will be too great as the process advances. You can already see the widespread use of ChatGPT by reporters, columnists, editorial writers, and others across the Indian media ecosystem. And we do not know that the core editorial values that the Editors Guild of India or the Press Club of Odisha advocates are being respected in practice. We must ensure that whatever AI tools are used for generating summaries, newsletter links, translations, transcriptions, formatting, that the journalist takes responsibility for the final use of the output. Further, the adoption of AI must be made transparent. In every case, transparent to readers and viewers so as to ensure the integrity and credibility of the journalism. The company that published the Hindu and other group newspapers has a fairly comprehensive draft generative AI usage policy, which has not yet been settled, but it will be done soon and adopted soon. But the processes are already underway. To ensure the responsible use of AI, there are guidelines for transparency, explainability, and accountability. AI-generated content must undergo human review to check for appropriateness, accuracy, and compliance with inclusion principles, particularly gender inclusivity principles. Not just in India, some other media organizations abroad, particularly in Latin America, are very keen on using AI to at least monitor the performance of the newspaper in relation to gender justice. To ensure data security, only essential and non-sensitive data are given as input into AI system. Because we do not, the AI systems, the big companies, the big players do not disclose many of the details that should be public. For example, what they train on. And there are already lawsuits by the New York Times and others against OpenAI for, in effect, stealing their material, violating their intellectual property rights, their copyright, and so on. And we have to see where this goes. But the short point here is we do not know enough about how they do what they do. They are not transparent. So feeding sensitive data or giving them as an input into AI systems is a big risk. All employees are being trained on the ethical use of AI, data privacy, and security. We monitor AI use for compliance and legal standards, with periodic audits to be put in place to ensure ethical AI deployment. AI models are rigorously being tested through demo phases and proof of concept before being deployed in production. Fine-tuning and prompt engineering are applied as necessary. All this sounds very impressive, but the actual application, the actual impact of the use of AI is yet to be felt in a very serious way. You can say the impact at the moment is secondary or even peripheral in many areas, but there's but plenty is going on behind the scenes to see and test these tools. And I think in the Times of India, they are ahead. They've been doing this for quite a while, but we do not know enough about it. Only organization-approved AI tools through office accounts can be used by our journalists. Tools such, I'll come to this in a minute, tools such as the Hindu Style Guide, the Hindu Search Engine Optimization Guru, and the Gender Bias Analyzer are used to standardize content, ensure SEO optimization, and mitigate against gender bias in articles. And we use external AI tools, including OpenAI's ChatGPT, Microsoft's Copilot, Google Vertex, Gemini, and Perplexity for these projects. The 6th World Media Summit, held earlier this month in Urumqi in China, had as its theme AI and media transformation. Addressing the plenary session of the summit, the Hindu's editor Suresh Nambat stated that, and I quote, "We believe in using AI to maximize the use and reach of existing content through translation and transcription, to personalize subscriber experience through newsletters and summaries, and as we go along, to generate news from clearly identified structured data sources such as financial reports, sports scores, and weather data. They will, however, not substitute for journalism that interprets the data and provides context and insights." He entered the important caveat that despite its transformative potential, AI's creativity is limited by its reliance on pattern. This I've already mentioned. Now I'll come to specifics. I requested our CEO, because it involves both business and editorial functions, to give me a note for this conclave on what has actually been adopted. So far as we are concerned, the Hindustan Times is also active in this, and as I said, the Times of India probably has a lead in trying to apply this. I don't know enough about various other media organizations, including the Indian Express, which is also quite active in this. But so far as our experience goes, I think it'll be useful to be specific. Obviously, the most useful application so far, and India, I think, is not ahead in this. India is lagging behind developed countries so far as applications of Gen AI tools is concerned, which may not be a disadvantage. I think we have time to review it. Going slow may actually give us some advantages in this respect. But clearly, the most important application is search engine optimization, meta description. We have integrated ChatGPT into our workflow to generate the SEO meta description for a given article when it is marked as ready for publishing. The generated meta description can be edited by the user or accepted as such. This is available across all our publications. And the core stakeholder here is the SEO team in products, not so much the journalists in the front end. It's in production, and it's clearly the most useful application thus far. SEO headline. The AI model will generate the SEO headline for the given article. This will be integrated into the workflow. To be clear, the headline is mainly for machine reading, that is search engine and their consumers. And this headline will not appear in the article or on the page, print or digital. It's available for all publications, but we encountered some problems with this product, and it is waiting to be deployed. 3, News Digest. An editor can give a number of our article links to the engine, and it will write an introduction and give a summary of each link and generate the newsletter. This doesn't relate to core journalism, it relates to subscriptions, so on, and this is under trial by subscriptions. We'll roll out to editorial after subscriptions the department gives their feedback. News quiz, custom GPT to generate a quiz with 3 questions and multiple choice answers. This format is based on a given article. The claim is this will help in reader engagement. And the core stakeholders are editorial and product developers. The status of this is it's on trial by Young World. It's one of our sections. We'll roll out after feedback. News poll, custom GPT to generate a poll based on a given article. Core stakeholders, product and editorial. This is on trial by Business Line, a business daily in the group. Social media post generator. The model will generate posts optimized for Facebook, X, and LinkedIn, keeping in mind the character restrictions of each format, as well as the tone and nature of hashtags. This is waiting to be deployed. Video description, and this may be of interest to a lot of people, and chapterization. The model will process the video to be published and generate a video description, as well as to give the timestamp markers to divide a long video into chapters. And this has been deployed and rolled out for testing. Another interesting application is style guide adherence, style and usage guide adherence. The model, we have a style and usage guide, and the model will evaluate and score a given article for its adherence to the style and usage guide. And the core stakeholder here is the news desk or the news desks. It has been deployed. We received a lot of feedback, and it's undergoing further training based on the feedbacks. Podcast generator, again, maybe of interest to you, a lot of you. Convert an article into a script and generate audio code stakeholders. This is a challenging application. It requires a lot of training, and it is in the works. User needs scoring. The model evaluates and scores a given article against user needs models, and this is in the works, requires extensive training. And finally, audio transcription. We have trained journalists on using Google Pinpoint for getting transcriptions from audio files. And we are also building an app for doing this in a simple way. I don't want to suggest that the Hindu group is far ahead of anyone else, but there is active work going on, and a lot of these products need further testing. You need to get feedback. You'll get some flack, you'll get hallucinations, you'll get inaccuracies, and it's quite an interesting game, but a very complex game. And as I said, I think India is lagging in this respect. This is not going to be a huge problem. The claim that AI is going to transform journalism completely is, I think, overblown. I think a number of journalists are worried whether their jobs will be taken away, particularly reporters. I think if that's going to happen, that is not going to happen very soon. So I think we need to have more discussions on this, bringing in tech people as well. And a lot of the young journalists, I think, have the skills to do this. But it's an important area, and since India is not far advanced in this, we do have time, I think, to reflect on it, to do more testing and trials, and to the extent possible, get it right. So I just want to, I think I've taken quite a lot of your time, but I think I want to end on the note that people like me believe in the core values of journalism, the functions that I referred to earlier, the credible information function, the critical, analytical, investigative function, the need to serve as a forum for different views to contend, and the agenda building role, and we have to limit, and of course the entertainment function of journalism, of media. And I think the Indian situation, although it is disturbing in many respects, the targeting of journalists, the misuse of laws, there's a lot of other material which Van Ifra has put out, including the misuse of laws relating to economic offenses against journalists. There are case studies here. If there's interest, we can discuss that. There's quite a lot of research on these areas. So while there is room for concern, I want to end on an optimistic note, not just to boost morale, because I think that is the real situation on the ground. Given the way the political situation is evolving in India, I think the vast, diverse, and uneven, mixed up Indian media, I think we have an important role to play in the immediate and intermediate future. And I thank the Editors Guild of India and the Press Club of Odisha, the leaders who are here, for this opportunity, and also for holding the other sessions, which we look forward to.
We have a 10-minute period for question-answer session. Ram needs to be thoroughly grilled because he spoke in details about everything concerning media, modern day situation. So if anybody has any queries, yes, the young lady there. Could a mic be given to her, please? The cordless we'll have 3 questions total. If you could please write down your question so that you are eloquent when you read it out, not be vague. Please.
A very good morning, sir. I Jyotirmay Mishra, student of journalism and mass communication from BJP Autonomous College. My question is that you talked about the central functions, that how AI can prove to be productivity in the field of media industry, and afterwards you also told how AI gives the undesirable consequences in the media industry. So I want to know how it can be productivity.
I think so far it has been productive in fairly minor ways, but since putting it out on the internet is very important, search engine optimization is the major advantage, as I said. So far as the journalistic tasks are concerned, of course you can get summaries. If you read if you do an interview, you can, if you're not particularly well prepared, you can get some ideas because it's got a lot of data. But the risk is that people tend to plagiarize. And I think a number of young reporters, they have to watch out against this, because it's very easy to, for example, if I want to write an article on what happened in the Lok Sabha election, and say, go to ChatGPT-4 and ask it to give me a 500 word or a 750 word or a 1500 word, there are limits to that, the word length. It'll give me quite a passable article. And if I take that and put it in my copy, it'll be very hard to detect, unless your news editor or supervisor knows that you're not capable of writing this, and suddenly something happens. So that could be the misuse. And I think, I have a sense that since ChatGPT is so pervasive in India also, quite a lot of people are using it. Whether they actually plagiarize or just import this stuff, I don't know, but certainly they're using it because we observe that. The other productive use would be translations. Yesterday, at a get-together hosted by our host here, I took a passage in English and fed it to ChatGPT 4, saying translate into Oriya. I can't read it, but my friend who read it said it's pretty good. He was very surprised. And if you ask AI specialists, not just for media in the world, what is the most beneficial use of AI so far? There are things like AlphaFold 2, where AI has been used to crack what is known as the protein folding problem in biology, detecting the structure of proteins. What used to take a year or two now can be done in minutes, and it's available free in what's put out, the tools made available by Google DeepMind. But there are applications like that which are clearly beneficial. But if you ask AI experts or people drawn from different scientific fields where AI is applied, what is the most beneficial application to date? The unanimous answer will be translations. And this will be of great use to journalists in this. And if you have a multilingual media organization, then this will definitely increase productivity. But at the end of it, you can't rely on it. You have to know the language and get some people proficient in the language to edit it. I think there's nothing wrong. But you have to disclose the fact that this is AI generated. This translation is generated by, and be more specific than just AI, say that ChatGPT 4 has been used for this. If you do that, then I think there's nothing wrong with it. Or if you send out a newsletter, particularly your business, your marketing people send out newsletters to try to get more subscriptions or attract more views, then there's nothing wrong with it. But if you use it to write articles without disclosing the fact that this has been AI generated, and also if you can't write an article just using AI because it's trained on data that's already there with all its biases, imperfections, inaccuracies, and so on. So if you don't verify it, it's no use. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but those are some of the productive uses and also traps that are available today.
I have one. I have always this other view, and Ram gave you a very straight, proper answer. But I got to hear from a friend who lives in Israel that with all this digital age, the walkie-talkies and the pagers burst. What happened was people who had put in their biometrics into their pagers, when they took it near their eyesight and it reads the pupil. Even on iPhones, you see, it says facial recognition. It doesn't actually recognize your face, just looks into your eyes. So when they took it near their eyes to open the pager, it burst. So some 8,000-9,000 Hezbollah fellows went blind with that. And those who had digital opening and they did it from their waists were blown apart. So that's the other side of the digital age.
Yeah, good morning, sir. Good to see you here. So, being a very seasoned journalist and part of the head of the editorial team of a conservative media like Hindu. So, how do you see like that Elon Musk is openly promoting Donald Trump to be the president of America? How do you see Elon Musk is openly promoting Donald Trump to be the next president of United States of America? What is your view as the head of the editorial team as a conservative media like Hindu? So that I'll be very specific about.
Elon Musk is entitled to support anyone, but
how do you see it?
but the extent to which he goes
Exactly.
to
That's
do it, yes, is extraordinary. And Elon Musk is now being widely criticized for what he's doing to Twitter and so on, the kind of politics and issue causes he espouses. And I think that criticism is well deserved, because he's an uncontrollable force, it seems. The entire platform is hijacked for it. I don't know. I think Mr. Sanjay Hegde posts and I post, and I think we don't necessarily, we are not hijacked, I think. But yes, it is true that when he bought Twitter, it was seen as a poor decision, but he has been able to transform it and change the rules of the game for the worse. There's no doubt about it. And if you see what Alan Rusbridger, former editor of The Guardian, and others have written, they are very, very critical. And there's even a move to get off X, that we boycott X, but they've not done it yet, because X still matters. But in India, Twitter has a much lower following than Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and so on. The actual, and another thing, if you go to Mr. Modi's handle, you'll see, what is the latest? Is it how many million? Can somebody check for me? But there are not that many Twitter users in India. It's only a fraction. So I don't know how. 91.8. But look at the number of Twitter users in India. It's about 25 million. So all these are the diaspora. They bots. It's not just Mr. Modi. It's for anybody, including us. There are a lot of bots which are following it. But you have to be more critical of these numbers when you see the reach. They want to create the impression that, particularly with Prime Minister Modi, whom I know quite well, I think his approach seems to devalue the professional media, that I don't care that much. You know, journalists are not taken on board when he goes abroad the way previous leaders used to take them. So it's more social media. But is the actual impact what it claims to be? The social media, this has to be researched. And I think it's exaggerated, greatly exaggerated.
We have, we have one last question. Time is running out, so quickly. Thank you for getting it drafted. Very good.
So my name is Saswat Panigrahi. I'm an independent journalist. I have worked both in regional media and national media. I have seen some very concerning trends. Orissa only makes headlines during natural calamities, and otherwise the state disappeared from national headlines. Why it is so? Number two, when Health Minister of Odisha was shot dead in January 30, 2023, Hindu featured the story in other states section. It could make it to the front page. Why? And when revered Hindu monk Swami Lakshmananda Saraswati was murdered in Kandhamal in 2008, it was a single column story in Hindu. And when the Kandhamal riot happened, it made it to the front page flyer. Is Hindu anti-Hindu?
I think you can figure that out for yourself.
Yes.
The Hindu, editorially speaking, strongly advocates secularism and is very critical of any attempts to deviate from that. And we have plenty of that these days. And I think there are other newspapers also that take this stand. Not too many. No, 1 minute. As for Kandhamal, in fact, I was the editor at that time, and the story of a rape of a nun was sought to be underplayed in the national media. Maybe they didn't know enough about it. And I sent a very fine journalist, Dr. Parvati Menon, to come here And I think missionaries of charity were involved. We dug it out. It was true that it was front-paged. There's no point in comparing. Something happened that it's called false equivalence. Somebody was murdered, of course it's published. But here was a story that had been underplayed, that had even been suppressed. Please.
No.
You asked me a question, do me the courtesy of listening to me, and then you can come back if there's time, now or later. So it was an investigative story, and to the credit of the Chief Minister of the day, Mr. Naveen Patnaik, he acted on this basis once it came out. And the matter was, secondly, Odisha doesn't get negative publicity. In fact, in an award that we give, Sports Star Award, year after year, the state that wins, the state that does most for sport is Odisha year after year. And twice the Chief Minister came to Mumbai to receive the award personally. And I think also there's been a lot of analysis about governance in Odisha, studies which we have published, several pages. So I don't think you should get the impression that Odisha comes into the news. It's a great civilization. I know that Oriya is a classical language. There's a lot of culture, dance forms, and so on. I think there is a great deal of respect for Orissa, but also surprised that a fairly low-key political leader was able to win so many terms. So what's the secret of that? And there's been quite a lot of analysis published on this. We took, in cooperation with CSDS, they did some very good surveys. So be proud of what Orissa has done rather than find fault about this.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Ram, and thank you for the time, the valuable time you have given us. We're really honored and very happy meeting you. You are a personality that a lot of us in the field of journalism look up to for your fearlessness and for the courage that you exude at every moment. And last evening I found out that he's about 17 and a half, 18 years old, because his talk, his digital gadgets, and what he sees in Chat GPT-4 and his whole demeanor is of a youngster, of a teenager. So I only pray to Lord Jagannath that you stay like this and be a light to all of us journalists. Thank you. Now I would like to invite Mr. Ruben Banerjee, and the General Secretary of the Editors Guild of India, who's been just re-elected again with Anantnath. So I congratulate him for his victory in the election, because now elections seem to be the most important thing that happens in this country. And so congratulations, Ruben. And along with Ruben, I'd like to invite the panel, Mr. Tapan Mishra, the editor of Samaj, one of the oldest language dailies. I'm not calling it regional. It's one of the oldest language dailies in India today, 105 years old. And I would like to invite on stage Ms. Tanaya Patnaik, the editor of Sambad, one of the youngest editors, probably the youngest in Odisha for sure. And I will... okay. So now the stage is on to Ruben.
Can I stand and do it?
No.
Well, thank you, Tathagat. And I'm so happy, and it's a great privilege for me to be on the stage with two stalwarts. Tapan Babu, one of the most respected editors in the state, and a very young editor that we have here, Tonaya. Given her age, I think we will get to hear a lot of fresh perspective. And this particular subject of our discussion, being a journalist in a state, is something very close to my heart, because I think 60 to 70% of my career, professional career, I was a reporter, a state reporter. And essentially in my mind, I still continue to be a state reporter. So it's a great honor to be in conversation with these two people. Tapan Babu, we all get to know, we are living in Delhi right now, so we talk about so-called mainstream national media. And not much is heard or talked about regional media. And the subject of today's discussion is opportunities and challenges. Opportunities, yes. I would like to believe that it's advantageous to be in a state because of being a smaller place, you get better access, you get to know politicians and important people very quickly. I would be more keen to find out what the disadvantages are.
Pardon?
What are the disadvantages of being a journalist in a state, being a practitioner of journalism in a state?
Thanks. When we are talking about regional medias, I think I should switch over to Odia, because it will be my pride to speak to the audience in Odias, and those who do not understand Odias, I can in between talk in English or in Hindi. Particularly Mr. Ram, Mr. Hegde, Parinjay Thakurta, and those who have come, especially the press council people. अपन जो कहते जे challenges कौन Odisha is a small state. Literacy rate is not very high. Media is not yet fully developed. Media scenario is not fully developed. ता सत्य मध्य गोटे कागज एठी 105 वर्ष हला बंचिछि. आपनकर 1866 जदि ओडिया जर्नलिज्म रा जन्म हुए ता भीतर जति वर्ष हला ता भीतर गोटे कागज 105 वर्ष हला बंचिछि with some disruption. That is Samaj. And Samaj once was regarded as a Mahavishnu of Odisha, like the Mahavishnu of Madras, the Hindu. At one time, I don't know now, I'm not reading too much of Hindu. Hindu used to write in its front page, India's national daily, even though it was published from Madras. I think that is still there. Mr. Ram will agree with me. Likewise, Samaj is also considered as a national daily of Odisha because it is the synonym of newspaper in Odisha. We have seen a lot of ups and downs in our long existence, and I have spent there almost 40 years. And my colleague there, Ashok Das, who is a veteran journalist, he has also spent very valuable time of his career there. The situation has changed a lot. Challenges are many, opportunities are limited.
So what are the challenges?
Challenges is first, the finance. The regional medias are those who are trust-based or family-based papers, those who do not have much resource base, they are not cash rich. Without cash, without solid financial support, it is very difficult to run a business like Samaj. At the moment, I am both in the charge of general manager and the editor. And I know when it is the end of the month, what is the difficulty to pay for the...
So it has finally come to that even paying salaries is a challenge.
Yes.
Even for Samaj.
Yes. You say just this month, on 29th, the 30th salary day, and 5 days after that, for puja, we have to pay the bonus around 2 crore rupees.
But I am told the Orissa government really gives a lot of ads, so you should be having a good time.
Let me come to the point. National advertisement, particularly the corporate house advertisements, that amount is shrinking day by day. Day by day, that amount is shrinking, and there are a lot of formalities, the ABC figure, readership survey, all these things are there. Government is now the biggest advertiser. Maybe it's national government or state government. When you are a very steadfast paper, you are a very righteous paper, you are a very value-based paper, it is very difficult on your part to balance both the sides.
So you think that the state government punishes you for your journalism?
No, not punishing us, but you cannot have a free run.
Okay.
You cannot
I
have
get
a
your
free
point.
run.
I'll come back to you. Tonaya, being a young editor, if you'd appreciate your fresh perspective, I think my biggest worry would be the quality of journalism that's practiced in Orissa. So what's your take on that?
What exactly you mean by the quality
You
of
think
journalism?
that the journalism is of cutting edge? Like we are really practicing honest, virtuous journalism that it ought to be?
You're comparing it with who is practicing?
Nothing like
So I think I will just take a moment to thank the editors, Guild and the Press Club of Odisha for organizing this very important
And
event.
Tonaya, by the way, has become a member of Editors Guild, one of the
Thank you.
youngest members.
So just taking off from what Tapan Babu is saying, what is the major challenge? I think somewhat connected to your question, I would say the major challenge for journalism and journalists in Odisha would be credibility. So there is a credibility crisis. I think all of us would agree. But it's not that all credibility is lost, but we're definitely going through the crisis, and this problem is not unique to Odisha. The kind of journalism you're talking about, there are a lot of times that the kind of journalism that is being done, I'm sure none of us are really proud of, but that is not unique to Odisha. If there is anything specifically unique to Odisha, you might ask me. But I feel, the entire industry is fighting to survive. He was talking about salaries, bonuses. This is a story every month. And like they say, marta kya nahi karta. So we have to do so many things which are probably we're not proud of. But I think that is a problem or a crisis that is being faced by the entire country as a whole. But in between all of that as well, I feel that, journalism is surviving. There are opportunities. I would like to focus more on opportunities. Otherwise, how is a 105-year-old paper still there? How is a 40-year-old paper still there? There's so many media outlets in Odisha. And this is a golden period for journalism with the rise and opportunities for independent and digital media.
So apart from financial pressures that you obviously face, we generally operating out of Delhi, we tend to believe that the assault on media freedom is happening only in Delhi. It could be far worse in states like in Orissa as well. What's your take?
Yes, sir, that part is there. That part is there. But if you don't have enough money, you cannot go for quality, you cannot go for quantity, everything else will be affected. If you will not give good money, you can't get good talents. We are running short of talents in my organization also. Because as per the recommendation of the wage board, if you have to pay a huge sum. So where the money will come from? That is the fundamental question.
So I have always felt, having spent years as a state reporter, I have always felt that a state reporter, a journalist doing his journalism in any state, be it Odisha, Bengal, Uttar Pradesh, wherever, I think we essentially are confronted by 3 Ps. One is poor pay, poor protection, and local power play. Like you are more vulnerable to local power plays. You got a taste of it, your organization perhaps got a taste of it last year. Would you like to recount some of it?
Do want to really go back and, harp on about the past.
They would like to know.
So what happened with us last year was deeply disappointing, but I wouldn't say shocking or surprising.
You were not shocked?
We're not really expecting the government to lay a red carpet for us and ask us to criticize them. No one likes being criticized, right? It's just that, when somebody's telling me something, there are a lot of times, right, I feel like, I wish I could just kill them, right? But that's something we think, but the previous government just thought they could do it.
In short, for people like Ram and anyone who have come from outside, what precisely happened last year was her dad, who was the editor of Sambad, one of the most, he wrote 4 editorials against a particular bureaucrat. The police started coming, host of cases were filed, and her dad stepped down as the editor, and the police stopped coming. So it was pretty malified.
So I'm sure Sri Ram is not surprised. This is something which we all should be prepared for, I feel.
I do. In the given context, yes. Present scenario, yes. But I'm very curious to ask you something.
Yes, please.
That was the earlier regime which got voted out. Now, I saw in the papers that the same chief minister was at one of your events. Now, did you ask him why he did all that, why he did what he did? Did you ask him?
Of course, I did not ask him because I did not want to put him in an uncomfortable position. The fact that he came to our function, he accepted our invitation and he was with us, showed that probably he's realized that what they did was wrong. What they did was ineffective, and what they did was rejected by the public.
He didn't say sorry to you guys?
Does he speak?
I'm just very plain curious.
People have different, to answer you, no, he hasn't said sorry.
So this is something which I have always felt that whatever that is happening in the states, be it Orissa, Bengal, it was a very, very anti-media regime that we had till very recently. I can only hope that the new government will do better, but the picture has been pretty depressing. And we talk about what's happening in Delhi or in bigger cities. Sometimes we tend to ignore what's happening in smaller states. And Orissa has been pretty dismal, last 5 years in particular. So, and media largely being an unorganized sector, because I think most of our journalists who are in the districts and small towns, they are stringers. They do journalism. They don't get any protection. They don't get perhaps any salary. So do you think that there is hope of journalism being revived or good journalism being practiced in a smaller state like Orissa? Tapan Babu?
Just take the case of Samaj. It is a trust-based paper. It is run by a trust Lok Sevak Mandal, which has charitable works. It gives 1 crore rupees as scholarships every year to students, poor students, meritorious students, to the 3 crore rupees for medical and other purposes to the vulnerable people. In spite of that, we have 120 crores of income tax notice. Do you believe that our total turnover is around 100 something crores? And over that, we get an income tax notice of 120 crores, 60 crores for Samaj and the rest for the Lok Sevak Mandal. We are a charitable organization. We don't go for profit. Whatever profit we earn, we spend it for the welfare of the people and the employees. Then if this is the situation and the advertisement base is shrinking day by day, what will be the future? You just tell me.
Tapan Babu, you are hopeful that Samaj can survive this crisis? It will.
Samaj will survive because people are there with Samaj. That is the best thing.
Another, I do understand that there are host of problems that, challenges that we confront. We have no ready remedies. But in a state like Orissa or perhaps other states, journalism also suffers from lack of credibility. I remember when I was the editor of Outlook, we had done a story. 5 newspapers or 4 newspapers coming out of Bhubaneswar had the same story, same headline, same photograph. So obviously someone was supplying them with the stories. So do you think we can ever salvage the credibility, the media's credibility?
I would not like to paint a very dim or a very dull, a very disheartening picture, because I don't think all credibility is lost. Like, 10 years ago when I used to go for these Vanifra workshops, they would say print is dying, print is going to be dead, but we've survived. Our circulation, although took a big hit after COVID for everybody, we've recovered and we have a constant circulation. It means that people are there with you. People trust you. You have that connect with people. Otherwise, like Enram was saying that, if you are running on a propaganda or you have an agenda, then, it's not going to be long term. So I'm very, very hopeful. There is a credibility crisis. It's not for us. Digital is a very big challenge, adapting to digital as a competition as well, but also as well using digital for, all the array of initiatives that he was talking about. So, it's a challenge for us to get that. But the real challenge, I would say, 25% of your advertisement is government advertisement. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that was probably 6%, 8%.
So you'd always...
So when that's 25%, sometimes even 30% on an election year...
So you will always remain dependent on government.
Yes, and for that, how do you get out of that dependence? Samaj is a charitable organization. We're not even a charitable organization. We are a commercial business house, a media organization. So the reader, the viewer has to be ready to pay for it.
How often do you get calls from the CM's office?
From the CM's office? Oh, no, we don't get.
Piling on pressure on you?
It's just too early. They're just 4 months
No,
old.
I'm saying not only
They're
this
still finding their way out. They'll think about media later after a few weeks, few months. It's not our turn yet. But I hope the previous presidents would be a reminder of, when something is, too much of anything is bad. We've just heard that forever. And, I feel like, the intelligent and the smart people learn from previous mistakes.
Robin, in previous government, there was pressure from government, what to print, what not to print. But in this government, at least there is some request, not pressure at the moment.
So they are requesting, not pressuring. Okay.
Request. And the second thing, for a newspaper of 16 pages, I have to spend, each paper cost me 12 rupees, and we are selling it on 8 rupees. And out of that 8 rupees, the vendor, those who are taking, they are not depositing every month. So they are going for one-time settlement in each 2 years. So there is a huge loss. It's a drain of wealth. So how an organization like us will survive?
So what do you think, what is the way forward?
We are thinking about it. I cannot do anything. The management is there to do something. So anyway,
let's make the paper 10 rupees, both of us together, we'll survive. Tathagat Babu is also there, the industry will survive.
So do we have a consensus here that newspaper prices will go up?
Anyway, on the higher side, I feel, in Odisha compared to some other states. But like in the southern states, the number of circulation, it's huge. But again, it just become very, very expensive to print now.
Yeah, because the more you sell, the more losses you incur.
So. No, I don't know how Tathagat Babu is running. He is already 50 years old. We are 100 years. And they are closing up, and they have completed 40. Navin is coming up. He has completed 10 years. So the problem is that there is a very uneven competition among the stakeholders. Papers are running after papers, how to cut their throats. That is the problem. If you are cash rich, if you throw away a paper without a price to the reader, and you will bribe the establishment or the person concerned to get more advertisement, you will tweak the rule, then what other papers will do? They cannot do that.
You think that the newspapers are also trying to seek favors from the government for
Sir?
take favors from the government? The newspapers themselves are trying to please the government?
The government, total advertisement scenario in Odisha is around 400 crores. Out of that, 100 crores is going to digital media. Then comes 300 crores. Out of that 300, you have to divide it among the English and Odia newspapers.
So given this scenario, what happens to the practicing journalists in Odisha? What do you think as an editor? What do you have in mind? Like, how can the plight of the condition of journalists improve in this state? Like their welfare plus their professional, whatever they are supposed to do. Because if they don't get a salary, they don't have a regular income, we are actually encouraging them to resort to blackmailing and extortion, right? So why blame them?
So there are a lot of students here in the audience. Before answering that, I would say that, if you want to earn a lot of money, then journalism is not the profession for you, because even if you reach the top ranks, there's not going to be too much of money. And like Mr. Ram said, then you need to have that in you, that passion or that aspiration to make a difference. So when you're earning enough to survive and something else drives you, if money is the driving factor, then this is definitely not the profession for you. Secondly, obviously salaries should be credited on time, and I think most of the major media houses, they are paying the salaries, at least in Odisha, because I've heard of stories where journalists don't get the salaries on time. There is a salary system, at least as far as for our journalists and even their family members. They are all insured for health insurance. There is a bonus, there are incentives, but this is the most we can do. When we're struggling every month, the fact that timely salaries are credited to accounts, that's a big win. But after that, this is not a profession where you can earn a lot of money and compare yourself to someone who is in the IT or any other sector.
Another thing which I've realized from my time in the States is, like, particularly Orissa, stories are broken by local journalists, but the credit is taken away by journalists who come later from Delhi. So they take away the headlines, the limelight and everything. It's happened repeatedly, like with Panosh Punji, Kalahandi, Chobirani, that gang rape of 1980s. It's kept repeatedly happening. And I, as a state reporter, has always felt that being in a state, you are neglected because you are away from your publication center, the big media houses, and the editors really don't care much for you. So do you have this angst that though despite holding your fort, doing your journalism, possibly the nation, the Delhi, the big media houses don't give you adequate recognition? Like Samaj, but particularly by itself, is an institution.
Samaj is in a very tight position, like any other responsible paper, because you cannot bully the government, and at the same time you cannot tell the total truth. That is the.
So you are basically a tightrope walk.
You
have a tightrope walk. Be careful. What about what has been your experience been since post whatever happened to your organization last year? You are more cautious now?
I wouldn't say more cautious. So even in the previous government, so you have the opponents posting on social media, right? So when the BJD was in the government, the BJP would post clippings of Sambad in their narratives. And now even with the BJP in the government, the BJD also uses the clippings of Sambad in the narrative. So I think that is the biggest win for us. But secondly, I think we need to be smart about reporting as well. Let us just accept the reality, criticism is not going to be welcome. We just cannot do whatever the hell we want to write and expect no one to ask us anything. I think, we need to be where are our journalists? What is the kind of reporting that we are doing? Forget about the government. The pressure is there. Let's just accept that there is a lot of pressure. There was pressure. We were at 140, now we're at 155. It's not such a, big leap or something. The pressure was there, pressure will be there. But are we reporting from the ground? Are we doing enough investigative journalism? Are we talking with facts? So there have been times when, we just write or say something, right? So we need to be very smart about our reporting. We need to do first-hand reporting. I hardly see any kind of reports which are with verified facts. You know, it'll be difficult for people to question you. It'll be difficult for people to put pressure on you when you're reporting with facts, when you're reporting your language, your tone, everything matters. And I feel that we have to accept that when we have to be cautious about what we're putting out on our outlets.
So essentially, we also have to get our act together, do better. So this is where Tathagat is signaling to me wildly. We'll wind up here. There are few key takeaways. There are huge challenges, great opportunities, but huge challenges for a regional media, particularly in Orissa. One key takeaway for me, Samaj, Mishra Babu promises will survive, will continue informing us.
Yes.
Tanaya, young editor, I think journalism will have a great future. Thank you all.
Thank you.
We'll have a 5 minutes question answer session, and after that, I will tell all of you what is kept in the plans. It'll be a 5-minute question answer session, please. We'll go by timing, not by the number of questions. So if you have a question, please draft it and quickly ask. Okay, since you raised your hand, what is your name, sir? And you start.
Yeah, good morning to all. Very good session. I congratulate Tanaya, sir and Rubin sir. My question is, nowadays after internet, we saw so many journalism. Like all social medias, they are playing a vital role. They are creating nonsense news and saying that whether chicken is fast or egg is fast. In fact, I questioned the same question to one of the senior journalists here. Humbly, I am taking his name, Mr. Manoranjan Mishra. I asked him, sir, why these type of things are coming? He said, because viewers are seeing the question, viewers are there. That's why we are making the news. Is it wise? First. Second.
Brief.
Yeah.
One question, please.
One question. Do we need a regulatory for managing this journalism? And the second is do we need a seminar for the viewers also? This type of seminar you are conducting for yourself. Like what viewers is thinking about your journalism?
Whom are you asking actually?
I'm asking the all the editors.
Everybody.
Yeah,
then
yeah.
Ruben, you answer this.
That's a bouncer.
He's in entirety.
No, but then I do get your point, what you're trying to say, but I think we'll have to do constant self-appraisal. The media as a whole has to do and get its act together. I think it's self-appraisal and we'll have to find our way. There is no one single bullet.
Every time it is told that the viewers are...
No argument, please. That's it. Again, Kontu.
There is a tendency that any anti-government news or views given by any media will be the darling of the masses. But those who deal with this, then they will have a dancing tune at the best of the government. So you have to survive or sink, that is your choice.
Any other question? You have asked. Okay, the young gentleman at the back. Quick question, please.
Sir, namaskar. My name is Malik. I am IMC student. Sir, गणमाध्यम लोकों प्रति विश्वास कमी कमी जाउछे सार कहथिले क्रेडिबिलिटी कथा ट्रस्ट कथा तो एथि पई गणमाध्यम राजनीतिर हस्तक्षेप दाय बोली आपण माने भाबुचंती कि
कोन एते जल्दी कहि दलो मु भी बुझ पैलिनी
सर क्रेडिबिलिटी केमि देबे
media is a big politics
घरे राजनीति हो मीडिया कथा कहउछो छाडलो आउ at the back, white shirt. What's your name? Roshan. Okay, Roshan. Quick. Yes, from there.
My question is for Ms. Tanaya Patnaik. Ma'am, what are the challenges faced by emerging female journalists in Odisha in terms of credibility, for example?
Tanaya ma'am.
Credibility for female journalists. First, they need opportunity. They need to be included. So I don't think there's a credibility issue for females as such. There's a credibility issues for the industry. But for females would be, of course, support from management, opportunity in the first place, opportunities for leadership roles, opportunity to be in decision-making roles. Don't look at me as an example. I'm an example of nepotism. But there are a lot of people who are really deserving, but probably our newsrooms are not ready enough to listen to them. So that would be one of the many challenges.
May I
and
add,
also maybe a
sorry.
pay gap, gender pay gap.
May I add one more line? I think Tanaya ma'am will agree. There is no gender in journalism. Huh? Journalism is either you are born with it or you are not born with it. Whether you have a nose to sense what is news or you do not have a nose. There is no gender at all. It's a gender-free profession. That's again? Yes, there has to be a nose for news. Yes. Okay. Yes, Paranjada. Microphone, please. This is the last question because after Paranjada,
I want to ask a question to
ask?
both of the people on the panel. In the past also, those who were in positions of power and authority, they were not tolerant towards their critics. Among the journalists, सहनशीलता नहीं था, सहनशीलता छिलो ना. Is, after listening to you, both of you, do you think the change that has today happened is that they are not just intolerant, asahanshil, they are now vindictive, pratihingsha, vengeful. So the income tax department goes after you, the chief minister does not apologize. So my question is that.
Dada, you were in that great political and economic weekly. You had a better experience than me.
I'll second that.
So we wrap up?
Again, 5 minutes. Sorry, Lani. Please, we have to stick to time because we are running behind schedule. Please keep that question in mind. In the next session, which will be chaired by Mr. Anant Nath, you will have the first opportunity to ask the first question, and I'm sure it will be earth-shattering. Thank you so much. We have a tea break now, ladies and girls and boys, and 15 minutes sharp. The time now is 12:05, so we start exactly 15 minutes later. Thank you.
ଥାନ୍ତି ହାଇପର ଆକ୍ଟିଭ ସେଟା ଏଭ୍ରି ସେସନରେ
It's 12:20 according to my clock. Please check your phones. So please reclaim your seats, otherwise they will be gone. Tanya madam भी टिके बसंतु जिब्बेनी please. Tapan sir, बस. Okay, टिके photo उठेवा बंद हो. Let us all, the gentle people outside, may please come back. Everybody to please come back. Sakya sir, I would request you to tell everybody to please come back into the hall. We'll restart. It's 12:20. It's become 12:21. We have started late, so we should stick to schedule. And nobody should leave. We have a sumptuous lunch waiting to be served. Navino ପଳେଇବେନି lunch ଅଛି ଏ ଶୁଣନ୍ତୁ ଓଡ଼ିଆ ଲୋକ ଆମର କ'ଣ କହିଲେ ପେଟ ନ ପୁରି ଆଉ ସେଇଟା ନଥିଲେ ଆଉ ଆମେ କରୁଛେ କ'ଣ ଚାଖେଣ୍ଡେ ପେଟ ପାଇଁ ଏଇ ଫ୍ରେଜ୍ଟା ଆଜ୍ଞା କେବଳ ଓଡ଼ିଶାରେ ଅଛି ବୁଝିଲେ ଟିକେ ସମସ୍ତେ ପ୍ଲିଜ୍ ଫେରି ଆସନ୍ତୁ ହଲ୍କୁ we will restart. The children may please sit down. The students, please sit down. Quickly, please. Okay, please, will everybody come in instead of going out? We need the attendance now. This hall is not filling up. I know tea is excellent out there, but finally we have to be... Sir, Anand sir, could you please call your students? And the others also, not just your students, please call everybody. Independent journalist sir, टिके समस्त को डाकी दियंतु please. आमे तो कहीं independent पाइलु नहीं, अपन तो at least independent. हम कोड से तपन सर परा पदारे नंगला कर दी गले इंडिपेंडेंस कौन एपटे भी देखिबो सेपटे भी देखिबो shall not be permitted to enter. I would actually like to relinquish the stage to Mr. Anant Nath. Anant Nath is the editor of The Caravan and the executive publisher of Delhi Press, India's leading magazine publishing house. He restarted the magazine Caravan in 2010, shaping it as a publication dedicated to long-form narrative journalism. And while I was in Delhi, I was actually subscribing to the hard copy for a long time. and I was very impressed, and I have plagiarized portions of it and spoken about it in Parliament also. That apart. The magazine was among the first that his grandfather had started in 1940. Today, it is amongst the most respected publications from South Asia, known for its bold, investigative reportage on politics and business, as well as its nuanced coverage of arts and literature. Mr. Nath is the president of the Editors Guild of India, re-elected just recently for the second term. Congratulations, Mr. Nath. The senior most body of editors and journalists in the country, as well as the president of the Association of Indian Magazines, the National Association for All Magazine Publishers. He has studied management from IIM Lucknow and political science from Columbia University, New York. I would like to invite Mr. Anant Nath on stage and let him take over the work from now on. Thank you.
Thank you, Tathagat. We would like many people to plagiarize from Caravan. The only request we will have, please subscribe to the copy of Caravan and then plagiarize. We are very, very open with our content being reused, returned, and so on. But thank you, Tathagat, first of all, for being a partner for this initiative. Just for everybody to get a sense of why we are here. I've been part of Guild office for the last 4 or 5 years, and first as a treasurer and general secretary, and now as president. And one thing that our members have always reflected upon and introspected upon is that Guild, this is Editors Guild of India. And while the name is Editors Guild of India, in practice we end up becoming Editors Guild of Delhi, because a lot of our membership ends up being in Delhi, because of course most large national media, their editors are residing in Delhi. But even then, a lot of issues, a lot of activities of the Guild do end up being Delhi-centric. And there is an urgent need, there has been an urgent need for many, many years, if not more, to expand the footprint of Guild across the country. And we've been thinking about, how to go about it. Expansion would mean expansion in members, because an organization like this is only as strong as the membership it has. The Guild is a voluntary organization of editors. It is not an organization of institutions. And the idea here being that as institutions, as the last session talked about, there are pressures on institutions that we have to deal with. And we have to live with the practicality of it. But the Guild, being an organization of individual editors, irrespective of where they may go on to be across institutions, should be another, perhaps a stronger anchor for journalistic values, independent of the pressures that their institutions end up facing, and therefore a higher moral compass. And an organization like this will only be as strong as the membership not just in a particular region, or definitely not limited to national capital, but across the country. And therefore, this is something we've been trying to figure out: how does the Guild expand its membership across regions, but also carry on its work, recognizing the challenges that various regions face. And whilst we may agree that the issues remain the same across the country, but the way those issues get manifested and the way different power centers in different states, whether the government, whether some other power center, the way they impact a journalist's right or media organization's right, need to be documented, need to be talked about. So this initiative, which is, I'm glad to say, the first such initiative we put together of taking Editors Guild's activities across the regions, is the first of its kind, and I'm very glad that Tathagat has been so proactively our partner. It gives us immense pleasure that we plan to organize these series in the months to come. We have one in Bangalore, which is planned in December. We're talking to various other press clubs, but this is the very first state where Guild has sort of organized, at least in the last few years, this program. So congratulations, everybody. Congratulations to Tathagat. Thank you to Tanaya for supporting us, and thank you, of course, all the supporting partners, the Education Institute, KITS, and of course, Sambad and Press Club of Odisha and Dharatri Orissapost for sure. And, the Guild, of course, has been taking up these issues very proactively, at least to the best of our ability. Mr. Ram had talked about the collective action that Guild and press clubs across the country need to take. And no matter how dismal the picture may appear at one end, but the reality is also that if media gets its acts together, if press associations, Guild, even media organizations, they come together where you can challenge the government's action, which you may find difficult in an individual capacity, either as a journalist or as an organization, because you don't want to paint a target on your back. You have practical constraints. But as a collective body, you can do far more. It opens up the space. And that's where, this need for collective action is very important in a time like this. And whilst one can be slightly pessimistic about the times we're living in, there is also enough and more reason to be optimistic. Just in the last 6 months, we've had 3 major victories. The broadcast bill, Mr. Ram had alluded to it. The government had proposed a draft broadcast bill last year. They were expanding the scope of the handles that the government was giving itself in censoring and blocking content. When the new government came to power, they introduced another new broadcast bill where they were expanding the scope from beyond television to OTT to even individual content creators on YouTube and Twitter, and they would all have come under broadcast bills. Guild opposed it, various other organizations opposed it. Internet Freedom Foundation was there, various press clubs, DigiPub was there. We all worked together, and eventually it forced the government to drop the broadcast bill, at least for the time being. So these are small solaces we need to take in the victories that have come to us by collective action. Under the IT rules, the government had put together a fact-checking unit, which would have given the central government a sweeping power to determine what is fake, and not just fake, but misleading regarding affairs of the government. And their version would have been the last and final version. We as journalists, we as media organizations, we as even individual commentators would have no handle to oppose it, except to go to the court, which we know, of course, is an extremely arduous and a procedurally difficult journey. But the government would have been the final arbiter and a censor in deciding what is right or not right about their own affairs. The Guild, along with some other organizations, challenged it in the Bombay High Court. The Bombay High Court had a split verdict earlier this year. It was referred to a third judge. We continued the battle, and finally the third judge agreed with Justice Gautam Patel and held the rule unconstitutional. I think which was a big victory for all of us, because if the government had come up with this notification, it would have been really end of journalism in a manner of speaking. So there is enough and more to take sort of pride in and work upon. And today's program has been curated to talk about the same issues that the Guild has been talking about: ethics in media, challenges in digital media, challenges of AI, which Mr. Ram eloquently elaborated upon, and of course the way laws are being framed. Which brings me to the session that we have at hand. Last few years, just to put a few words in context of how this session has been sort of put together, the government has introduced a series of laws. The IT rules were introduced in 2021. The broadcast bill, which was of course introduced, has been taken back. Data Protection Act was passed. There was a Telecom Act which was passed, which also has some handle to regulate content. And the new Press Act was introduced last year. It's now an act which replaced the earlier PRB Act. And over and above, the criminal laws, new criminal laws were introduced this year. In each of those laws, there are provisions which give a state agent, whether a ministry, a department, or a law enforcement agency, a wider handle to label a certain content wrong or against Article 19.2, which is the reasonable restrictions on freedom of speech. The starting point of all of this is that we don't have absolute freedom of speech in this country, unlike in US, where the first amendment said there is absolute freedom of speech. In India, we don't have absolute freedom of speech. In fact, very contrary, our First Amendment expanded the reasonable restrictions to freedom of speech, whatever may have been the reasons. But even a government, even a Prime Minister of the caliber of Nehru, did sort of fall to this trap of increasing the restrictions on freedom of speech. And we, over the last 80 years, I think, have paid heavily by this broad expansion of whatever is called reasonable, what are subjective, what is subjective to one person may not be subjective to the other person, and that handle has been very widely distributed amongst various layers of the government. So how does media operate? What are the challenges we operate? That's what we thought we will talk about in this session. We have with us three speakers who have been very intricately involved in either bearing the brunt of it or deciding on these issues. Justice Anand Patnaik, very well known, of course, in Odisha, needs no introduction, a former judge of the Supreme Court, former Chief Justice of Madhya Pradesh and Jharkhand High Court, and somebody somebody through his work is renowned for his integrity and dedication to upholding justice. And of course, Justice Patnaik, his notable decisions, especially on the coal allocation, underscored his commitment to transparency and accountability. And for his incisive legal reasoning with respect to the democratic principles, Justice Patnaik remains a steadfast advocate of judicial integrity. We have Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate of Supreme Court, again somebody who has taken up these issues and has been a great ally of organizations like the Editors Guild and various other free speech activists in defending their rights. And of course, Paranjoy, who's been an advocate, a victim, and a crusader in all these issues that we've sort of faced. So, if I may, I will ask each of the speakers to please take stage, first of all. Please welcome everyone. Justice Patnaik, Senior Advocate Sanjay Hegde, and Paranjoy. And I'm going to ask each of the speakers, starting with Justice Patnaik, to give 15 to 20 minutes of opening remarks on this topic. We are giving it a little bit more time because this is a very, very deep topic. About 15 to 20 minutes, I would suggest, followed by a rather free-wheeling discussion. And again, if people are wondering that there has been a shift in the schedule, we have put the digital session after this one, in case people are wondering, because the digital session was supposed to be at this point. Justice Patnaik, if I could invite you to give your special address. Thank you.
Good afternoon to all of you. When I got the request from Mr. Anantanath to come to this program, I asked him, what do you want me to speak on? And I am a judge of the Supreme Court. I can speak on Article 19(1), your freedom of speech and expression, which also incorporates the freedom of press, the media. He said, no, we are more concerned with Article 19(2), which imposes restrictions on the freedom of press. So that is where I start from. And then I see your concerns, media concerns. I've been reading about those in the newspapers. I will suggest some changes which you can take up with the government, and some which you cannot take up with the government, you have to take to the courts. Right. This is the only remedy that you have. And I must tell you, I was here in the previous session. I also wanted to be a journalist. First a doctor, then I gave up pre-medical, then I studied a lot of political thought, political science. Then I thought I become a journalist. But then I started thinking, where will I get the money from? Survival would be very difficult. So I gave that idea. I'm not that fortunate as Tanya Patnaik. who has a sambad already to start with. So I gave up that. I said, let me look at profession where I can also earn good money and remain independent. That is how I joined the legal profession, where I earned well, but my earning was very limited to 20 years, and the judiciary picked me up for judgeship, and I became a judge for more than 20 years, 20 and a half years. So therefore, I'll start from Article 19.1a and then Article 19.2. As you all know, under Article 19.1a, all citizens have the right to freedom of speech and expression. There is no mention of media there. There is no mention of press there. But the Supreme Court has said freedom of speech and expression means also freedom of the press or freedom of the media. That is incorporated in it. And then the courts have said freedom of speech and expression for media cannot be anything more than that of the citizen. So whatever limitations are there for a citizen, those limitations also apply for freedom of press or media. They cannot ask for more. Because Mr. Anantnath had sent me some letters addressed to the Prime Minister and then to the leader of the opposition. They went through it. And he's asking for some exceptions. I thought over them. I said, how can there be exceptions? If the freedom of speech and expression for the citizen and the freedom of speech and expression for the media is same, they cannot carve out an exception for media separately. Whatever limitations are there for the citizen, whatever law they have to face, whatever consequences they have to face, media also has to face them. So this is one thing that must be clear. We can't carve out exceptions for the media in the name of independent journalism or for democracy, so on and so forth. Now, Article 19.2 says, nothing in subclause A of clause 1 shall affect the operation of any existing law or prevent the state from making any law in and so far as such law imposes reasonable restrictions, very important, reasonable restrictions. So it's not any restriction, reasonable restrictions on the right conferred by the said clause in the interest of sovereignty and integrity of India. This is number one. Number two, security of the state. Number three, friendly relations with foreign states. Number four, public order. Public order was not there originally. It was incorporated subsequently by Pandit Nehru's government by the First Amendment, because they found the Supreme Court struck some acts down. They say, yes, it may be affecting public order, but it is not protected under 19.2. So therefore, public order was subsequently incorporated, which has created a lot of problems. Because all the offenses basically try to maintain public order. Decency or morality, or relation to contempt of court, defamation, or incitement to offense. Now, let me come how the law was therefore brought in. There was the Indian Penal Code earlier, and now the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2003 has come in. And I will quickly tell you, I need not go through the provisions. Section 152 of this new law is same as sedition, 124A. I have a chart, and I can also compare them for your information. So 124A Indian Penal Code is kept intact in section 152. There may be some changes in words here and there. Then 196 of the new law is equivalent to 150A of the Indian Penal Code, and that relates to, promoting enmity between different groups on grounds of religion, the race, place of birth, residence, language, etc., on doing other acts related to harmony. Obviously, this is to ensure that the public order is maintained. You are seeing in the newspapers somebody criticizing a particular religion, and then that group of religion who has been affected, they start pelting stones on the other groups. So many law and order situations come. They are all justified provisions. Maybe the language may be creating problem. Then 197, imputation, assertions and prejudicial to national integration. This also is very important. You can't just say this kind of a law should not be there. Then 299, deliberate and malicious acts intended to outrage religious feelings of any class by insulting its religion or religious beliefs. Very much necessary today. Right. Then next, 302. 302, it says uttering words, etc., with deliberate intent to wound religious feelings of any person. And then 356 is defamation. So there is a debate so far as defamation is concerned, because it affects really, it does not affect law and order. It affects an individual. Why not just have a tortious liability, civil liability, damages? A debate. In many other countries they have given up. This can be thought of. The legislature can think of this. Get rid of defamation as a criminal offense and put it as a, anyway, it was challenged before the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, no, this is the reputation of a person is very important. This should remain as a criminal offense. And that is how, since the Supreme Court has already justified it, you can't say that this defamation provision can go. There was a chance for the Supreme Court to say otherwise, but they didn't do it. Right. Now, the problem here is, in all these provisions, in many cases where the offences are not really made out. I was hearing last session, the state government or the central government, they don't like all this criticism. So they would like to mobilize their police machinery and book all these journalists who are criticizing them, some offense or the other. And police starts acting. It's not happening only in central government, it's happening all over the state, all over the country. You see Tamil Nadu, they are doing the same thing. If you see Karnataka doing, I heard Ruben saying about Odisha, they were also doing the same thing. In Bengal, they are doing the same thing. They will not leave. Because political power is such, the state machinery is mobilized against any criticism. And they have to just find out which particular section to be booked in. They don't dictate the section. They only ask the police people, take action against him. I don't know what law you find a law and book him. This is what they do. And they find a law and book it. Now, when the matter goes to the magistrate, in 24 hours they have to be produced. You are a magistrate, whoever is booked. That is the constitutional provision in Article 23, 22.2. Right. It says, any accused has to be produced before the nearest magistrate within 24 hours. Any detention beyond 24 hours will be only with the authority of the magistrate. So it is for the magistrate to apply their mind and find out in which case the arrest is proper, in which case arrest is not proper. Unfortunately, and I'm saying that even though I have been a judiciary for so long, unfortunately, the magistrates do a very mechanical job and they don't apply their mind. In my opinion, the magistrates should be very committed to these constitutional provisions, be committed to liberty, and ensure that no innocent person is detained beyond 24 hours. This is what has gone wrong with our country. I have been the Chief Justice in Madhya Pradesh, And I put this question to my students, why are you not doing bail? Why are you not applying your mind? But they don't do it mechanically. They are not that committed to liberty. This is the sorry state of affairs. So what is the remedy then? What is the remedy? The remedy, I think, is, in the present state of the guild and the press, media all over the country must move the government to bring about some amendments in the law. Not as an exception, because I said, you cannot be accepted from the other citizens, but to provide checks against wrong arrests or abuse of these provisions, penal provisions. How can that be done? As you know, all of you know, under the CRPC, old CRPC, there is a provision for sanction of prosecution of government servants. Before a court can take cognizance of an offence, sanction of the government is necessary. Even under the Prevention of Corruption Act, sanction of the government is required, competent authority. Before the court can take cognizance. So that acts as a check that a wrong person is not being unnecessarily, the facts are examined, wrong persons are not being unnecessarily booked by the police. Right. Even on the Mining Act, Development Act, there is a provision that nobody else except the mining department of the state government will sanction an offence related to mines. So these are normal provisions. I would suggest you should move the government to provide some check, not of the government, not sanction of the government. One authority could be the Press Council of India. And one of the functions of the Press Council of India, you know, I understand that Press Council of India is not very active, right? But it is headed by a Supreme Court. It has to have a, some provision. There is no provision there. Or some body, some independent body which will examine, let the police complaint come before them, or let a private person make a complaint to them, and let that body examine it, and give sanction only where it is satisfied there is no misuse of the offensive provisions. This is very important. This check can work on. Absolutely. But you can't be accepted from the normal law that is applicable to all citizens. This is a suggestion that I gave. You can work on it. Now, the second area, as you know, contempt of court is part of Article 19(2) of the Constitution. Don't have to be bothered about contempt of court, because contempt of court means ultimately the court has to decide. And civil contempt, you will not be called on to answer. That means disobedience to the orders of the court, or writs of the court, or judge in the court. That normally the media is not concerned with. It's only one party. Unless you are a party in that case and you are disobeyed. Like you saw in the Ramdev case, how he's being summoned all the time, right? Because they are not disobeying. That's why. Now, so far as criminal contempt is concerned, there is a danger there. Criminal contempt has been defined to mean the publication of any matter, so far as you are concerned, which scandalizes or tends to scandalize or lower the or tend to authority of the any court. Like an evidence, you may publish it something. I'll give you an example. Prejudices or interferes or tends to obstruct any judicial proceedings. Some case is going on. Though the courts don't exercise it. I remember in that Nupur Talwar, how much of interference the media did. Media almost convicted. And I was sitting in the court when I saw the CBI gave a closure report, but yet the court opened it up. I said, no closure report. They have to be summoned. So when the matter came to the Supreme Court, I said, why? Why is someone when the CBI is given a closer report? But my colleague, my brother judge said, no, sir, let it remain. Because the media was affecting and CBI was also there supporting the media. Take out, take out, take out. And I was sure that ultimately this will end up in acquittal. And it happened. Allahabad High Court acquitted them. But the family suffered a lot. So, this is the next example. Then interferes or tends to interfere with obstructs or tends to obstruct the administration of justice in any other manner. This is a very broad thing. So, when administration of justice is affected or when the court is scandalized, authority is gone, is eroded, then there is a problem. Who will respect the court then? That is why these contempt provisions are there. And contempt provisions also have, in the Contempt of Court Act, there are provisions, innocent publication and distribution of matter, not contempt, they have said so, in Section 3. Section 4, fair and accurate report of judicial proceedings, not contempt. And Section 5, fair criticism of judicial act, of a judgment, after it is published, not contempt. And finally they have said, even if you do contempt, apology, if somebody comes and gives an apology, mistake, the court normally will say, all right, take an apology and go. So contempt of court is no problem. Sometimes it is a problem. I'll give you, I had an opportunity to handle once. When I was a lawyer in Orissa before my elevation, and Mr. Biju Patnaik was the Chief Minister, suddenly I received a letter from Mr. Biju Patnaik in a personal envelope, and I opened up. He's written it in his own hand. On the top, Sri Anand Kumar Patnaik is requested to defend me in the High Court in this case. And I opened up the papers and found it was a summon issued by the High Court to him for contempt. And what was against him and against your paper, Samaj. You know what he had done? In one meeting, in one meeting, he went to the stage in a conference and said, the High Court judges are like white elephants of Siam. Right? Very expensive to maintain. 2.5 lakhs we spent on each High Court judge. Every month, Mr. Tathagata Satpathy was among that. Right? And is it justified? Is it giving relief to our poor people? So somebody a lawyer filed a petition in the High Court. Huh? Yes. He's a lawyer. He filed a petition. And Samaj as the second party, first party Biju Patnaik. And I had to defend him. So I telephoned to him. I have to draft an affidavit to show cause reply. Have you given this statement? Yes, yes. I have given that statement. No mistake about it. Don't disown it. You defend me otherwise. So I defended. And it was a division bench of Justice P.C. Mishra and Justice G.B. Patnaik. And my argument was, look here, every citizen has a right to criticize an expensive system of justice, including the High Court. He is not criticizing any particular judge. Every citizen has a right. Right. And then I cited a judgment of the Supreme Court Justice Sabyasachi Mukherjee, where the Law Minister of India had given a statement somewhere in the south. Shiv Shankar had given a statement that Supreme Court is a class institution. It has number of bourgeois and this class and that class. As a result, justice is not coming. Right? So, that petition was dismissed by Justice Sabyasachi Mukherjee. He cited a very good judgment of Lord Dennings, which said that, see, on the one hand there is contempt, but on the other hand, something greater is at stake, democracy. Freedom of speech and expression, that's necessary. You must balance it. You can't just give contempt big priority. So, what I am saying is considering this approach of the courts, not to haul up people for contempt, be approached. There's another example I'll give you. Justice Krishna was the bench, Justice Beg was the Chief Justice of India. A letter was written by Justice Beg, the registrar, to the High Courts during emergency. That why High Court is not doing this, High Court is not doing that, High Court are not doing this. Right. Then somebody took it out of the newspapers. That during emergency, High Court has been functioning much better than the Supreme Court. So this came out in the papers. Justice Beg issued contempt notice. Why High Court is doing better? Justice Krishna was sitting there. And then when the hearing started, Justice Krishna said, how is it the contempt? How is the contempt? Let us drop it. So they dropped it. That's a reported order in the papers. So therefore, Supreme Court, the High Courts are quite liberal, very liberal. And even if some order is passed against you, it's appellable. Single judge passes an order, it goes to the division bench. Criminal contempt in any case has to be a division bench. Then it goes to Supreme Court. They never punish you harshly, right? Very rarely they put you inside. Now, the last item, and I'll stop that because the other is the legislature. Under Article 1053 and Article 1943, powers and privileges and immunities of each house, its committees are almost the same as that of the House of Commons in England. The vast powers of breach of privilege, not defined. So, there is a lot of danger, and today politics, lot of danger for media getting into trouble from any legislature party. So this is the area. But if they issue a breach of privilege notice, all that the Supreme Court would do or the High Court would do is this a breach of privilege? If this is a breach of privilege, then no interference, because the Supreme Court has held in the first case of Mr. Sharma, that Article 19(1)(a) and Article 1053 and 1943 has to be balanced, reconciled. And it cannot be struck down. It cannot be struck down. So if there is a breach of privilege, they have the power to act. But Supreme Court later case, Raja Rampal case, 2007-3 SCC, they have said, in any case, if the court finds that there is no breach of privilege, but they are abusing this power to take action against anyone, the court has the duty to protect the citizen because of Article 20 and 21 of the Constitution. So there are safeguards there also. You can go to the High Court or you can go to the Supreme Court. And mind you, this is a very dangerous power. I recall that once when I was a judge in the Supreme Court, in the High Court, an IAS officer, quite a senior IAS officer, he had issued a circular. He was the CMD of ITCOL, Mr. Rishikesh Panda. So issued a circular saying that no MLA will be allowed inside the guest house of the ITCOL without my permission. That circular got in the hands of some MLA. He made out copies and circulated amongst all the MLAs in the house. And Mr. Navin Patnaik, Chief Minister, when he walked into the assembly, All the MLAs got up and said, we want suspension of this officer. Immediate suspension. And Mr. Navin Patnaik couldn't follow. He walked back, right, to his office. And in the afternoon when he goes to the office, he finds a resolution, unanimous resolution, adopted by the House for suspension of this. So Mr. Navin Patnaik thought, I must protect my seat, perhaps. He suspended the officer. He suspended the officer. Then he moved, first this tribunal, then came to us. As a High Court judge, division bench, stayed the suspension, saying, Assembly has no power. Under the Act, All India Services Act, state government has the power. And state government has done it. Mr. Navin Patnaik has done it as a state government. But he has to apply his mind. Whether there is a grave offence, a grave misconduct, and whether suspension is required for any inquiry, no application of mind, state the suspension. I signed the order. My colleague on the other hand telephones to me, the other judge in the division bench, shall I sign this? Why? Do you know the consequences? And what consequences? We may have to go inside. The House has the power. I said, I know the consequences. But we have to take that risk if we have to remain independent. And we took that risk. They sat down to decide what to go, what to do. Finally decided, no, we have to go to the Supreme Court. They went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court did not stay it. And ultimately, it just issued a notice. Went on. And thereafter, they forgot about it. Right. So, you have to take, as independent journalist, sometimes you have to, if your commitment says do it, do it. You have to face the consequence. Independence has certain price. Right. I am sure Mr. N. Ram remained. What suffering Indian Express did not go through in the emergency days, when newsprint was limited, when the Indian Express building was sought to be taken over in Mumbai. So for independence, you have to suffer, otherwise you can't be a journalist. If you are committed to journalism, please do it. And finally, so far as other rules affecting freedom of press is concerned, you can always challenge it under Article 32 or Article 226. The Supreme Court, if you see the judicial precedents, I have written some judgments of that. Article 19(1) has been given a lot of expansive meaning. Very, very fundamental. Very, very fundamental. We don't allow that fundamental right for freedom of speech to be affected at any cost. Very rarely do we uphold the restrictions. We're very careful about that. I have delivered some judgments also. Cannot be lightly handled. You must have heard also Justice Chandrachud saying so number of times. Freedom of speech and expression has to be protected. It's very, very important. In my view, that's very important. And one area which I was hearing, if you have to really protect freedom of speech and expression and remain neutral, my view is the media houses should not own it. The business houses should not own it. Business houses should not own media. If they own media, they've got so much business interests. They're bound to come under pressure in any government in the interest of the business. Never. So, therefore, media houses should not be owned by a business family. This is absolutely necessary. This is absolutely necessary. At the end, I would say, for democracy, independence of judiciary is important, everybody knows. But independence of media or press is equally important. Equally important. You must have seen a few years back, presently it is better, how judiciary started crumbling. And along with it, how media started crumbling also. And that we should not. Neither judiciary should crumble, it should do its duty, nor should media crumble. Do your duty, and I'm sure if you do your duty, government and legislatures also will be under control. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So the points that you have raised and touched upon, if we were to truly elaborate on that, it will be a full day session, because you have really touched upon each and every fundamental point that both media and judiciary is facing, and you have articulated that in a very, very lucid manner, but it of course requires much deeper deliberation. And before I call on Paranjoy, I'll just make two observations. One is a wishful thinking and one is just a clarification. The clarification was that in our letter to the Home Minister, we had not asked for journalistic exemption, but exception to the extent that any FIR to be registered should be after a scrutiny of a higher authority, which is what, of course, you were also recommending. Yeah. Any authority. So I wanted to clarify that we were not saying that we are above. We also respect Article 19.4. We are equal amongst in front of law, but we just want, because journalists are working, some of these FIRs or complaints are on work being done by journalists as part of professional duty, there should be a higher level of scrutiny. And the wishful thinking is, and again the lawyers here will, and you will be better placed to correct me, isn't it true that wherever a judge is it the court can be summoned wherever a certain judge is? So the wishful thinking is, if that was extended to former judges also, then your notes on contempt of court would give great solace to us. Because one of the institutions that we as media fraternity find very difficult to comment and criticize is the judiciary. Because the sword of contempt is always hanging. And whenever we send an article for a certain review to let's say a friend, a lawyer friend, that we are writing this article on the judiciary, they are also equally fearful of contempt of court. So your words are very big, give us solace. Yeah.
Delivered in the Supreme Court is criticized. What I'm saying is, when I was in the Supreme Court, I didn't get any criticism of my judgments. But two instances I'll tell you. One is this Lily Thomas case, where I struck down the provisions of the Apprentice People Act and said, once you are convicted, once an MLA or an MP is convicted, out he goes from the house. He cannot file an appeal and wait till the appeal to be said. That was the provision. I struck down. Right. Then what I heard was, from many lawyers, wherever I went for a dinner, sir, you are being criticized every day in the Central Parliamentary Hall, all condemning your judgment. And in this, Times of India said, Supreme Court strikes at Parliament. Next day, there was a politician who said, let us strike back at the Supreme Court. Right. But interesting was, that judgment remained, could not be got over, even they tried to do it. But Rahul Gandhi tore off the ordinance because the president said, I'll not sign this. Right. But what criticism was, I found one day a full coverage in the Indian Express, an advertisement by Association of Democratic Reforms. And it showed that a judge lying on the ground with the judgment showing, and 3 politicians, one with a broomstick, another with an axe, and third one with a lathi, beating up the judge. So that was the criticism, that was the cartoon that was there. I went to the Supreme Court and I asked my other colleague who had signed it, this is Mukhopadhyay. Who is it, Mukhopadhyay? Only one judge is shown, 2 judges have signed. Then he said, sir, in that cartoon, did the judge have a moustache? I don't have a moustache. No. It has, yes, there was a moustache. Then it must be me only, they are hitting me, because I have a moustache. This is one criticism. Second criticism that I had was, nobody criticized it. Nobody criticized it. A judgment that was in Right to Information Act by my colleague, judge. While writing the judgment, he said, first he struck down. I said, don't strike down. You have to read it down. While reading down, he said, judges of the Supreme Court, judges of the High Court should be Information Commission. I said, what have you done? You have saved it, but how can the provision is not there? Right. Then I was reading the newspapers. As a perception of the people also important. So we reviewed it, removed the clauses, and made it a different provision altogether. And we said, no, this cannot be done. If the Act does not provide for judges, then you can't put judges there. But information commissioners must be properly appointed by a search committee and all that. That is what it is. This is the only 2 things I remember. We correct ourselves also. There is one judgment of, this is Bhagwati, in Antule case, made a mistake by saying that Antule will be tried by the High Court. Antule filed a petition. How can I file when the Act says special judge has to try me? No, they say earlier we correct our mistake, the better it is. Right? So judges also correct themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Paranjoy, can I invite you to speak?
भाइयों बहनों देवियों सज्जनों ladies and gentlemen धन्यवाद 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 thank you so much Editors Guild, thank you so much all of you. Each time I've come to Orissa, it's been a very significant occasion, and I'll try and make sure this one is too. The reason why I'm the second speaker is they think that if there are too much legalese, one judge and then a lawyer, you might fall off to sleep. So I have been invited because I can sing and I'll dance. And though Anantnath is not paying me, I will nevertheless sing and I will dance. And I know that every single word I say and every action of mine is going to be immortalized in YouTube. So let me begin by one of the last remarks that the Honorable Judge made. He said, business houses should not have media interests. Hello, goodbye. The 2 richest businessmen in India, the 2 biggest oligarchs in India are the biggest owners of the media, Mr. Adani and Mr. Ambani. I am not telling you an official secret, it is a fact. Official secrets is another case of judicial, you know what the government does to the law. The Official Secrets Act is an old man, he's over 100 years old. And there is a young teenager called the RTI, the Right to Information Act. But the old man is not giving any precedence to the young teenager. Therefore, the RTI is in a mess. It's been consistently weakened by the government because they prefer the Official Secrets Act. Next point, sir, and I'm only going to speak to you for 15 minutes because that's the time that has been given to me. I won't take any longer. Judge Sahib is absolutely right. This 19.2 is the problem. Who decides what is reasonable? Yuktigat. Juktigato. Who says? My neighbor who doesn't like my face? The gunda down the road? The constable in the local thana? The magistrate of the lower court? Or the Chief Justice of India? Who decides what is reasonable? That is the problem, that is the discretion, and that is where all the problems arise. Now, let me take a few steps back. And I want to take what Mr. N. Ram said a little forward. Today we are living in a day and age where among the two largest multinational conglomerates in the world are Meta and Alphabet. These are run by two individuals or founded by two individuals who are today in their 40s. They're younger than me. I'm an old man. I'm going to be 60. I have turned 69 the other day. You're like my children, most of the audience here. Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, Instagram, and above all, WhatsApp. WhatsApp. Apple. Leave Apple aside. Let's look at Alphabet. Alphabet is the owner of Google. It's not that every word you can search and find out. They know if you have your map on, they know where you're going. So it's Google, but Google is not only Google. Google is YouTube, a virtual monopoly they have on YouTube, or on the whole audiovisual medium. And part of Alphabet is Android. Well over 85% of all the operating systems in your mobile phones are Android systems. Only a small proportion has Apple. So imagine these two corporations founded by individuals who are today in their 40s. Look at the amount of control they have. What you watch, what you read, what you hear. This is the age, the post-truth age. The age, as was pointed out earlier, the age of disinformation and misinformation. Let's come to India. Once upon a time when I was young, a telephone is a luxury, used to be a luxury. Today, India has about 140 crore people. Go to the website of the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India and you'll find that the number of subscribers to mobile phones in this country is in the region of 115 to 120 crore. What does that mean? That many SIMs, SIMs have been issued. What does that mean? What is a SIM? Subscriber Identity Module. It's inside your mobile phone. Do you know that in most parts of India, not just Bhubaneswar, not just a small town, go to Kianchar, go anywhere, in most parts of India today, if you exclude infants, there are more SIMs than human beings. This is the Naya India. अच्छे दिन आ गया जी, मोदी जी कह दिया अच्छे दिन आ गया. ठीक है, आपका बैंक का खाता में you haven't got 15 lakh rupees, but that's all right. These are electoral promises that are made in the heat of the moment sometimes. WhatsApp gives you end-to-end encryption. What does that mean? I'll give you one concrete example. Some years ago, a Muslim laborer was burned to death in Rajsamand district in Rajasthan by a fanatic who's right now behind bars. And he was burned to death, and one of his relatives actually videographed it. And it went viral. They showed how a man was being burned to death. When the police authorities went to WhatsApp and said, please tell us who was the first originator of this content, they said, we can't tell you. Our design architecture does not allow us. So even when heinous crimes are committed, the only way you can get your WhatsApp messages is when the police person seizes your phone. I've been honored. My phone has been seized several times. So was Mr. Arnab Goswami's phone. That's how you knew how television ratings can be manipulated, how a gentleman can become the information advisor. But let's move on. and come to our Honorable Prime Minister. Shri Narendra Damodar Das, Shri Narendra Damodar Das Modi is the one and the only Prime Minister of India, one and only Prime Minister who has never addressed a press conference openly. Tali bajao bachche. Every Prime Minister of India, some point of time, has taken, it's an unscripted, spontaneous press conference. Mr. Modi picks and chooses the people who he wants to give interviews to. And since I'm being recorded, I'll give you only a few names. There are many others. Shri Rajat Sharma, my friend. I've known him when he was a part of the Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad in Delhi University. Madam Anjana Om Kashyap. Mrs. Navika Kumar. Shri Rahul Shiv Shankar, also known as RSS, Rahul Shiv Shankar. I can give you some more names, if you like. Mr. Goswami is feeling a little left out, maybe because I only mentioned him once. It doesn't matter, there are many others. Deepak Chaurasya. Now you see, he picks and chooses them. But he is not just journalists, no? He picks and chooses non-journalists. You remember that very famous actor, Akshay Ji? Arey Baba, wo Canada mein tha, abhi Bharatvarsh mein aa gaya. He's one of the top income taxpayers of this country, you know. Very important question. He asked of the leader of the world's largest democracy, Mananiya Pradhan Mantri Ji, my driver, he asked me to ask you this question. आप आम कैसे खाते हैं? बिल्कुल जी, आप काट के खाते हैं या चूस के खाते हैं? I mean, it's such an important question. Only the leader of the world's biggest democracy can ask this question. Anyway, this is our life, so we have to live with it. As was already pointed out, it's not just the misuse of the law on sedition, the law on defamation. Never has the law of sedition been used so often as it has in the last 10 years. And as was pointed out by the Honorable Judge before me, he was from Orissa, therefore I mention him by name, Justice Deepak Mishra, the former Chief Justice of India. He's the one who said the right of a person, the reputation and the freedom of expression, and he justified why criminal content, manhani, should be both a civil offense and a criminal offense. I'll say some personal things about me, please don't mind. I'm the only citizen of India against whom Shri Gautam Adani's lawyers has instituted 6 cases of defamation. 5 are in Gujarat and 1 is in Rajasthan. Fact. These honorable lady and gentlemen did not answer my question. He had a little role to play in why I resigned from the post of editor of the Economic and Political Weekly. But let that be for the time being. The Honorable Judge mentioned the PCI, the Press Council of India. I was a member of the Press Council of India. I acquired notoriety because I was one of the authors of a report called Paid News, How Corruption in the Indian Media Undermines Democracy. There's a story behind it, but I will not get into it. But to describe the Press Council of India as a toothless tiger would be giving it a compliment, paying it a compliment. You know, शेर देख के तो लोग डर जाते हैं ना, उसको मालूम नहीं है कि शेर का दांत नहीं है. Sir, Press Council is actually weaker than a toothless tiger because it cannot scare anybody. It has no punitive powers. It is a quasi-judicial authority set up by an act of parliament with no powers. It has only powers to admonish, powers to criticize. Bad boy, don't do it again. Bad girl, go stand in the corner. Bad boy, catch your ears, go to that corner, go up and down. I'm sorry to say, the quasi-judicial body is just that. But the problem in India is we have a multiplicity of regulatory bodies as well as self-regulatory bodies. Let's take one example, the CBFC, the Central Board of Film Certification, also called Censor Board. It's been recently packed by propagandists of the Prime Minister. One of them once said, James Bond, you have been smooching for 7 seconds, cut it off, make it 3 seconds. Censorship in India is a subject of a big issue. We can talk about the OTT platforms and the depiction of violence and sex on the screen. And why? I mean, it's a huge subject. I'll leave it for another occasion. So you have the Censor Board. You have the Press Council of India. You have the Information and Broadcasting Ministry, the Suchna and Prasaran Mantralaya. They are the licensing authorities for television channels. They can withdraw it. They can suspend it. And that's not all. You have the TRAI, the Technical and Commercial Regulator. And then you have self-regulatory bodies. You have bodies like the Advertising Standards Council of India. You have bodies like the BCCC, Broadcast Complaints Council, something. You have the NBSA, the News Broadcasting Standards Authority, etc., etc. You have a multiplicity of bodies who are supposed to regulate what you watch, what you hear, what you cannot hear, what you should not hear. Therefore, we have complete chaos, complete anarchy, arajakata, complete anarchy. Today, we are in the day and age of convergence. It's all in the palm of your hand. Your newspaper is in the palm of your hand. Your radio is in the palm of your hand. Your television set is in the palm of your hand, and more. Look, radio in India. Akashvani is a unique organization. But we are among the only, just as we are among the few countries in the world where defamation is criminalized, we are among the few countries in the world where news and current affairs on radio is a monopoly of the government. All India radio will decide what you can put out on the radio. Prime Minister said, Prime Minister said, Prime Minister said. He cut the ribbon, he laid a foundation stone. Man ki baat, are baap re baap. Man ki baat. I will conclude a little earlier than scheduled so that my lawyer friend can come and speak to you. He's a lawyer, not a liar. And if he's keeping you from lunch, you blame him and not me. All right? So the point I wanted to make is about dogs. I love dogs. I think most dogs are better than human beings. Even when they're angry, they're snarling, they're angry. They're happy, they're transparent. They don't say something to you on your face and do just the opposite. They don't stab you in the back. So because there are so many aspiring journalists, you have to ask yourself, what kind of a dog do you want to be? So there is the watchdog. Journalists are supposed to be watchdogs of society. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the thief has entered your home and wants to burgle you. So the old dog starts barking. So the burglar is alarmed and goes away. You don't know, the burglar doesn't know that dog has no teeth. Booda ho gaya na. Uska bhaukna aata. He can only bark, he cannot bite. But he is a watchdog. Good, very good. But then we have the Godi media, the lap dog who sits on your lap and is very quiet. Forget barking, forget biting. You can stroke it gently, it'll wag your tail. Especially if the lap belongs to a powerful person, a big neta, a big babu, criminal, mafia don, mining mafia don, military officer. Very, 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 very quiet the dog is. Ravish Kumar coined that phrase, by the way. Intellectual property rights are his. He coined the word Godi media, and he also coined the word WhatsApp University. तो बौद्धिक संपत्ति का अधिकार रवीश कुमार जी के पास है. मैं सिर्फ उनको, I'm just a fan of his. People think he's better off now that he runs his own channel. I'm not so sure. NDTV, before it was taken over by Shri Adani, I think he had that big screen, he had the small screen, he had a team, and you don't know the algorithm of YouTube. He may be getting millions of views, But how much is he actually earning from YouTube? Because YouTube is a monopolist, just as WhatsApp has become a virtual monopoly. So you have watchdogs, and you have lap dogs, Godi Media. Then you have the intelligent guide dogs, in Switzerland, the Saint Bernard dogs would rescue people who are caught in a snow blizzard. Yeah, there are dogs that can help a visually challenged person cross a street. There are dogs that can sniff out explosives, ganja, charas, afim from our luggage. So, sir, we have reached a stage where we have to ask ourselves again and again, what kind of a dog do you want to be? Dhanyavad, namaskar. Thank you.
Thank you, Paranjoy, for really lighting up the audience. And because you brought up the topic of lunch, just a housekeeping announcement. We will not hold you back for lunch after this session. Lunch will be after this session, and the panel after this has kindly agreed that they will shift their session post-lunch, and Tathagat has agreed to extend his warm hospitality by giving us an encore or extended stay at the Press Club. So I thought I'll just let you know so that people should not be thinking that the lunch is another 1 hour from now. Right after we conclude the session, lunch will be served. And before I call up Sanjay, because Press Council's reference has come in Paranjoy's speech and Justice Patnaik's, the other thing is the Press Council chairman, even though, and it's an observation only, is appointed by the Parliament, but in a scenario like this, where the chairperson of Rajya Sabha is also with the government, and the Speaker of the Lok Sabha is with the government, we know who's making the appointment of the chairperson of Press Council. Sanjay, if he could ask you to come and take the stage.
Good afternoon, and I'm reminded of what my mother once said about some English member of parliament who was called the dinner gong, because he went on opining while they were thinking of dining. So I do not wish to opine very long. One of the principles of advocacy which Justice Patnaik's fellow judge, Justice Kadju, would advise us was to be brief, to be bold, and to be gone. So I think that one of the reasons that the Editors Guild of India and the Press Council has called me is my name. My name is Sanjay. And if you look at it, the very first journalist that we know was Sanjay. Sanjay was tasked and he was given the strength to look at a battlefield, decipher it for a blind king, and narrate it faithfully. In Mr. Ram's words, he had a credible informational function. He also had a critical function where he told Dhritarashtra that, look, here you have gone wrong. When Dhritarashtra at one point of time had exiled Vidur, it was Sanjay who was sent to get Vidur back. And he also had, at the end of the war, the task of setting a virtuous agenda. He was called by Yudhishthira and told to help in the task of reconstruction. And he stays on with the kingdom right to the end, where Dhritarashtra and the others walk over into the forest. He accompanied them. He saw to it that they died in a forest fire, reported it, and then went into the Himalayas. So Sanjay, as a journalist, is probably a very high standard, and that is why possibly, despite my name, And despite like Justice Patnaik, I too wanted to be a journalist. And I was told that, look, the pay is not very good and you are the first of 5 children. So it's better that you find something else. And I ended up through a possible career in the civil services, where I was supposed to be in the Indian Information Services. I avoided that and I ended up as a lawyer, where I met a former Minister of Information and Broadcasting, Arun Jaitley, who when he heard that I could have been in the information services, he said, yes. Oh, our paths would have still crossed. I said, yes, our paths would have crossed because my file would have been on your table for suspension. So I am very glad to be here to look at the task and at the scenario that now exists and do my own little bit of Sanjaying. And I'm not calling you Dhritarashtra, but I am trying to tell you exactly where your path of duty lies, like in the Bhagavad Gita, because other than Krishna and Arjuna, the first person who hears the Bhagavad Gita is Sanjay. Here, I would say that we today are in a post-truth world. The post-truth world is where the world has got accustomed to facts not really being facts. There's a word called truthiness. It sounds like the truth. You want it to be the truth, and therefore it must be the truth. This is where the journalistic function of insisting on a critical function of checking what is the truth. Because somebody correctly defined journalism as saying that if somebody says it's raining and somebody says it's not, it is the journalist's job to open the window, check whether it is raining, and then report. It is not the journalist's job to say, okay, what would be more convenient? Would our sponsors, who are fertilizers companies, who want it to rain, should we then go by what they say and then say that there is rain when there is no rain? Or what would my editor like? The function of journalism is also to communicate, and to communicate without fear. We've heard much about freedom of speech and expression and the reasonable restrictions that have somehow eaten up that freedom. I often think that we as a society emphasize restrictions more than the freedom. We've often in our own households been told that, look, this is not the thing that you say at this point of time. We are as a nation used to the idea that of karmanyavadikaraste, in one sense, that we have a larger social function, and therefore as part of that larger thing, we therefore need to go only on the path of duty without looking at the fruits of that action. I think we would possibly be better served if we were to look at things and say what we see. बोल के लब आजाद है तेरे, बोल के जुबान अब तक तेरी है. That is what Faiz Ahmed Faiz from across the border wrote. And it is nothing less that your viewer, your reader expects from you. Speaking truth to power is not just simply a masthead. Justice Patnaik and Paranjay, I think, spoke about Indian Express during the emergency. The Indian Express during the emergency could take that line because Mr. Ramnath Goenka, who incidentally was a businessman with several other business interests, said that I came from Calcutta with a lota and I am quite content to go back with a lota. It was Catherine Graham of the Washington Post who, with all her wealth, was able to let the story of Watergate play out. It is while a businessman will be very tempted to use a media house to further his business interests, it is also up to the media house concerned to have its own set of critical values which would keep the businessman or keep the business interests under control. Now, in a post-truth world where there is a price for paying the truth, as also people have said, one of the prices is often the threat that some little thanedar, some big minister, some big industrialist will take a dislike to you to the extent of possibly shutting you up. And we recently have a case which we were discussing with Mr. Ram, where a Hindu correspondent in Ahmedabad has been accused of being part of a GST racket, which his cousin has in a statement said that, look, this man was also helping us, giving us protection, etc. Now, the facts can play out. Investigation can go on. But a taxman, that's all a GST officer is, exercising police powers and keeping the man, a journalist, under detention. Shortly after a journalist writes stories about one important industry in the state of Gujarat, which is the diamond trade. Again raises questions. And it is there that collective action of the Editors Guild and others, press clubs like this, have to come into play. And my particular suggestion is that as far as all these legal problems go, and they are going to be continual, it is time that journalists think in terms of litigation protection. Please set aside specific dedicated funds, almost as an insurance policy, knowing that you may or your members may at some point or the other require access to protection. Many lawyers can give freely of their time, but as Napoleon famously said, an army marches on its stomach. There will be court fees, there will be typing, there will be cyclostyle, and a whole host of things. You can ask for a lawyer's time, but you may not be able to ask of a junior lawyer's time. This is where I would think that a dedicated fund to which on various occasions people can make contributions is the need of the hour. Justice Patnaik also spoke of how the magistracy has failed from time to time. But I somehow would beg to differ, because the magistracy today consists of many young, bright men and women who have opted, after a 5-year course, a well-researched legal education, to go into the magistracy. It is a magistrate who gave bail to Arvind Kejriwal when she had only a vacation assignment. And this was despite the superior courts having denied bail. I have also, during the CA NRC protests, there were times when we invoked the Chief Justice of India, but no particular effective orders were passed. The only order that was passed, which helped protesters at that point of time, was by a magistrate in Delhi. I have great hopes in the current generation of younger people who have gone into the judicial services, who have come who come from a generation which has decided that we will not get into engineering colleges, but we'll go for law instead. And they have taken seriously their tasks of being custodians of the Constitution. But to reach those custodians, when you are in trouble, it still requires more than dedicated lawyers, more than committed magistrates. It also requires a knowledge of the process. And the last thing before I go, especially because there are senior journalists out here, please do not rush to the Supreme Court for everything. When people come to me saying, why don't we go to the Supreme Court? My first reaction often is the first line of the Hippocratic Oath, which applies to doctors. The first thing you do no harm. Because once the Supreme Court says no, there is no other court which can say yes. There was the case of the Kerala journalist Siddiq Kappan, who all that he did was to share a cab to go and examine Hathras. And at that point of time, the administration was very insistent on shutting down any coverage. If he was arrested and had been produced before a magistrate at that point of time, or even any other court, in all probability he would have got bail. But what happened was, immediately there was an approach to the Supreme Court. It became a larger constitutional issue. They had to hear people at great length, and more importantly, the administration of the day then doubled down. Said, no, he is PFI, he is this, he is that, etc., etc., etc. So what would have taken before a magistrate's court, possibly a short hearing, extended to nearly two years or more of detention. So the courts, while they will grant relief, please know which is the appropriate court at which appropriate time. We've gone through all the sections. Justice Patnaik has referred to them. But please be aware that the law is a consistently evolving field. And while there can be no separate protection for journalists, there can be processes put in which make journalism slightly safer. But the correct way to go is to ensure that whatever privileges or whatever safeguards are available to a journalist for free speech are also available to the common citizen. It is when the common citizen speaks up exercises his right of free speech, that the journalist's power of amplification of free speech, the power of reach, comes into play. It's the freedom of speech as well as the freedom of reach, both of which need protection and will receive a certain measure of defense by the bar and protection by the bench. I thank you for giving me a patient hearing. I am most pleased to take any questions that you may specifically have. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you, Sanjay. And I think one point I just need to reiterate what Sanjay has mentioned, the alliance between journalists and lawyers. I can't reiterate the importance of making friends with lawyers, because they will be your biggest allies. There are enough and more lawyers you will find across the bar, senior, mid-level. And I know Sanjay said that not every lawyer, no matter how well-meaning they are, especially earlier in their career, they might not be able to spare time, the way some of the seniors can, because they're, of course, they have the liberty and the luxury to do it. But I would say, in my experience, there are enough and more lawyers, even at the starting stage of their career, where they're very deeply empathetic about the issues that we care about, and they will be the greatest, your partners, because your institution may or may not sometimes support. But individually, if you have lawyers who you can take advice from, fall back upon, your path becomes much easier, and you do find enough and more allies there. All right, thank you everyone. We will bring this session to an end. We will not keep any Q&A because this has been an extended session. There will be enough opportunity to sort of discuss. We will break for lunch. I do request the session, the panelists, the speakers of the next session to please bear with us. And also I would request the audience to bear with us and to join back, because the last session is I think the one that probably is most in sync in terms of the way journalism is moving towards, which is the digital play. All the speakers, they run their own, most of them run their own YouTube channels. They are voices, independent voices, which are speaking in a language and in a format that has become far more pervasive than some of the legacy media. And those challenges are at the cusp of the kind of changing contours of both media regulation and the way networks, because somebody pointed about how networks are sort of become a great arbiter in terms of deciding what to be published and what not to be published. So speakers in that session have had experience in all these issues. So thank you everyone. Thank you all the speakers for coming down today. We will continue this dialogue post lunch. And I would request everybody to join back by 2:30. 2:30, yes. Thank you.